Chapter 2772. Establishing the ninth sword peak was far more troublesome than Su Zimo had imagined. It was an extremely vast and complicated project. The layout of the 8 sword peaks had been passed down for many years. If one looked down from above, they would be able to vaguely see that the continent where the 8 sword peaks were located was a sword-shaped continent. Between the 8 sword-shaped continents, between the 8 sword peaks and the 10,000 Swords Palace, there were countless inscriptions that were difficult to see with the naked eye. They interweaved in the starry sky and formed a powerful sword formation. Once fully activated, the entire sword realm would erupt with an extremely terrifying killing power to defend against external enemies. And now, in addition to the 8 sword peaks, a 9th sword peak had to be established. This meant that in order to integrate the 9th sword peak into this sword formation, the original layout had to be broken. Many of the formation inscriptions had to be erased and rearranged. And the cultivators who set up this sword formation were at least immortal kings. Just establishing a large-scale continent out of thin air in the starry sky was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It required the Sword Realm's imperial lords to move back dead stars and lifeless continents from other regions of the upper realm. One had to know that each of the stars brought back was no smaller than Dragon Abyss Planet. However, the scale of the 9th Sword Realm continent was much larger than Dragon Abyss Planet. At the very least, it was comparable to the territory of the Divine Firmament Immortal Realm. To condense a continent on the scale of the Divine Firmament Immortal Realm, the number of stars needed was probably in the millions. To gather such a large number of stars together, under the joint efforts of the Imperial Lords, these stars were shattered and constantly condensed and hammered. In fact, the entire process was the joint efforts of the Imperial Lords to forge the 9th sword-shaped continent into a peerless immortal sword. Gathering 1,000,000 stars, condensing the essence of heaven and earth, and more than 10 Imperial Lords working together to finally establish the 9th sword-shaped continent. One could imagine how difficult it was. Just the formation of the 9th sword-shaped continent alone took more than 400 years. Then, in the center of this continent, a mountain peak that soared into the sky was erected. Su Zimo imprinted the inheritance and sword intent of the sword burial Tao into this sword peak, fusing it with the entire continent. Only then did the 9th sword peak truly take shape. If any sword cultivator wanted to comprehend the Tao of sword burial, they could come to this sword peak to do so. During this period of time, Su Zimo cultivated while watching the evolution of the 9th sword peak. The imperial emperors working together to forge a sword was a rare opportunity for him. Of course, the formation of the 9th sword peak was not yet complete. He still had to set up sword formation runes on the 9th sword peak, and then merge the 9th sword peak with the 8 great sword peaks and the myriad sword palaces' sword formations. Su Zimo had dabbled in formations before. But for a sword formation of this level, he couldn't interfere. He knew that setting up formation runes on such a scale and level would definitely take a long time. It would take at least several hundred years. In the following period of time, Su Zimo opened up a cave abode of his own on 9th Sword Peak, officially settling down there. On the other hand, the 9th Sword Peak was officially named Sword Burial Peak. Kitsune was the first to move her cave to the Burial Sword Peak. She was Su Zimo's eldest disciple to begin with, so it was reasonable for her to change to the Burial Sword Peak. However, Lu Yun, the peak master of the Sword Slaughtering Peak, could not accept it immediately. He complained to Su Zimo many times, but Kitsune was unmoved. In the end, he could only leave it as it was. Apart from Kitsune, the peak masters of the 8 great sword peaks also sent some ordinary disciples at the Mystic Essence Realm, Earth Essence Realm, and Sky Essence Realm, so that the 9th Sword Peak would not appear too deserted. However, no true disciple was willing to come to the Burial Sword Peak. On the one hand, Su Zimo was only a true immortal at the celestial being stage. More than half of the true disciples in the 8 great sword peaks were either at the same cultivation level as him or at a higher cultivation level than him. It was impossible for these true disciples to become Su Zimo's disciples. As for the remaining true immortals at the Unity Realm, their masters were all immortal kings. There was no reason for them to come to the burial sword peak and become a disciple of a true immortal at the celestial being stage. On the other hand, sword cultivators who could cultivate to the true first realm had cultivated in the sword world for many years. They had long developed deep feelings for their respective sword peaks and their fellow disciples. Naturally, they would not change sides easily. As a result, although the ninth sword peak was successfully established, and some ordinary disciples were forcibly sent over by the peak masters to keep up appearances, it was still deserted and not very popular. There were only two true immortals at the burial sword peak, and they were Su Zimo and Kitsune. One was at the unity realm, and the other was at the celestial being stage. In the eyes of other sword cultivators, it was too shabby and even a little sad. The two of them at the burial sword peak did not think so. Instead, they enjoyed it. Both of them were wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. They felt that it would be better if there were fewer people around. The news of the ninth sword peak's establishment had long spread. During this period, cultivators from other realms would occasionally come to congratulate them and specially send congratulatory gifts. Most of these realms were the surrounding middle-level and low-level realms. Low-level realms like the Ash Cloud realm, the Immortal Medicine realm, the Treasured Artifact realm, and the Seven-Star Sword realm did not have imperial emperors overseeing them. The strongest in these realms were immortal kings. Even so, one could see the strength and influence of the sword world. If these low-level realms wanted to survive in the upper realm, they would either have to rely on a super-major realm or be on good terms with the surrounding super-major realms or high-level realms. Otherwise, if there was a conflict or some unforeseen event, these low-level realms might be destroyed. After all, a top immortal king powerhouse could destroy a low-level realm. In order to show their sincerity, most of these low-level realms had immortal kings personally come with congratulatory gifts. When they saw that the peak master of the ninth sword peak was only a young celestial being stage true immortal, they were all dumbfounded and shocked. If not for the introduction of Lu Yun and the other peak masters, and seeing Su Zimo sitting side by side with the other peak masters, these immortal kings would not have dared to believe it. After confirming Su Zimo's identity, even though they were all immortal kings, they were still polite to Su Zimo. Although they were surprised, the immortal kings did not dare to show any contempt. Although Su Zimo was only a true immortal, he had the entire sword world behind him. This was the deterrence that the peak master of the ninth sword peak of the sword world brought to others. It was a strange feeling. Su Zimo was only a celestial being stage true immortal, but the immortal kings who came to visit him had to be polite to him. No wonder Lu Yun said that the identity of a peak master was a protective talisman for him. At least in the middle-level and low-level realms, no one would dare to attack him. From a certain perspective, Su Zimo's current status was even higher than the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain's Academy Patriarch. Chapter 2773. Time flew by, and Su Zimo had been in the sword realm for 1,000 years. The ninth sword peak had been perfectly integrated into the sword realm, forming a layout where the 9 great sword peaks surrounded the 10,000 sword palace. Of course, the ninth sword peak's overall strength was far inferior to the 8 great sword peaks, so it didn't live up to its name. In the past 1,000 years, although some ordinary mystic, earth, and heaven primordial disciples had come to the ninth sword peak to cultivate, none of them had stepped into the true self realm. Therefore, the ninth sword peak only had 2 perfected immortals. After stepping into the true self realm, one's cultivation speed would drop by a lot, and it would be even more difficult to break through a small realm. Kitsune had stepped into the true self realm for 1,000 years, but her cultivation level still remained the same. There wasn't much improvement. It was the same for Yun Ting of the Supreme Sword Peak. Cultivation in the true self realm would be extended infinitely. Sometimes, even some geniuses would be stuck in a realm for tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, unable to improve. Su Zimo's situation was a little special. Normally speaking, he had already absorbed all the energy in the Emperor's tomb, so his cultivation speed would slow down. But 1,000 years ago, he had merged the 2 great forbidden manuals and created the Sword Burial Tao. All these years, he had been burying all the Sword Taos in the Sword Realm in his own Sword Tao, which would continuously strengthen his cultivation. His sword Dao was like a tomb, burying all the swords. And because of Qinglian's body, there weren't any conflicts when burying so many sword Daos. More importantly, when Su Zimo wielded the Qingping sword and had the support of the Bodhi seed, he could achieve twice the results with half the effort when cultivating the sword Dao. The Qingping sword could help Su Zimo comprehend the sword Dao to the greatest extent. Because Kitsune had cultivated the Wu Dao and condensed a sword-type martial soul, Su Zimo couldn't compare to Kitsune in terms of talent in the sword Dao. But in a sense, the Qingping sword's existence had replaced the role of a sword-type martial soul. Over the past 1,000 years, many cultivators had ascended from the lower realms and landed in the sword world. However, almost all of these cultivators that ascended from the lower realms were scattered on the 8 great sword peaks. There were extremely few cultivators that descended on the 9th sword peak. The main reason was that the 9th sword peak lacked a peerless treasure that could gather heaven and earth essence qi and transform it into powerful sword qi. For example, in the center of the heaven realm, there was the divine tree of Jianmu. In the 9 firmaments immortal realm, there were also rare plants like the immortality peach tree and the ginseng fruit tree. Such peerless treasures were rarely seen in the world. Most of them had long been occupied by powerful realms. Peerless treasures that were suitable for sword realm were even harder to find. Things like the immortality peach immortal tree and the ginseng fruit tree would not be of much use if they were moved into the sword realm. They would not be able to transform the heaven-earth essence qi into sword qi. For 1,000 years, Su Zimo would try to communicate with Wu Dao's main body every once in a while. However, there was no reaction at all. He didn't know if Wu Dao's original body and the Void Yiksha had successfully entered the Ghost Dao or if they had encountered any dangers. The Ghost Realm was completely different from the Infernal Court. Due to the shattering of heaven and earth in the Infernal Court and the incomplete laws, there were no great emperors, and even imperial emperors could not be born. Therefore, there were no living beings that could threaten Wu Dao's original body. But the Ghost Realm was different. In the Ghost Realm, not only were there many imperial emperors, there was even a great emperor, the Brahma Ghost Mother. The Void Yiksha had once committed a heinous crime in the Ghost Realm and was banished to the Nether River by the Brahma Ghost Mother, leaving it to fend for itself. Wu Dao's original body and the Void Yiksha had entered the Ghost Realm together. It was difficult to predict whether they would be able to return to the middle world. Of course, even if Wu Dao's original body and the Void Yiksha were safe in the Ghost Realm, Qinglian's original body could not establish a connection with them. The middle world and the Ghost Realm were 2 parallel and independent worlds. Unless Wu Dao's original body returned to the middle world or was in the same realm, the 2 main bodies would be separated by the realm barrier. It was difficult to establish a connection across 2 independent worlds. On this day, Lu Yun Yulan and Feng Su, the peak masters of Slaughtering Sword Peak, came to visit. Lu Yun shook his head in resignation. "Brother Su, you've had it easy. At this rate, when will your buried sword peak rise?" "That's right," Feng Su chimed in. Feng Su added, "Let me tell you, many of the true disciples of the various sword peaks don't agree with you." Su Zimo didn't mind. "You can't rush things like this. The heritage of the buried sword Dao is right there, waiting for the fated one." Indeed, he couldn't be blamed for this. None of the true immortals of the great sword peaks were willing to come to buried sword peak. Since the burial sword peak didn't have any treasures that could gather vital energy, it was very difficult for cultivators who ascended from the lower realms to land on the burial sword peak. It would take hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years, for buried sword peak to rise to the level of the 8 great sword peaks. "Brother Su, I have good news." They chatted for a while more before Lu Yun smiled mysteriously. "We've found the treasure of the 9th sword peak. I just received news that there's a piece of great white arcane goldstone in the celestial bestowment world." "Oh!" Su Zimo was surprised. He'd heard of great white arcane goldstone before. It was a supreme treasure among divine metal ores. It contained the energy of arcane gold and was a natural fit for sword Dao. If a strand of great white arcane goldstone was incorporated into an immortal sword, its killing power would skyrocket. Such a rare treasure was indeed hard to come by. Yulan nodded slightly. This piece of great white arcane goldstone is most suitable as the treasure of buried Sword Peak. In truth, the experts of the world of swords hadn't given up on finding a treasure suitable for the 9th Sword Peak over the years. The 3 Peak Lords were even more excited than Su Zimo at the news of great white arcane goldstone. Where's the celestial bestowment world? Su Zimo asked. This world is a bit unfamiliar. Does it belong to the lower realms? Odd looks flitted across the 3 Peak Lords' faces when they heard this. To be precise, the celestial bestowment world isn't ranked among the lower realms. If we had to rank it, it would definitely be a super major world. The celestial bestowment world's origins are extremely mysterious. Even we don't know anything about it. The old geezers of the world of swords should know something about it, but they're very secretive about it. Yulan continued, we only know that the celestial bestowment world has the most unique status among the 3,000 worlds and is extremely ancient. It may have been born when the upper world existed. Moreover, the upper world has seen many eras and suffered many catastrophes, but the celestial bestowment world has never fallen. It's that impressive? Su Zimo clicked his tongue. Chapter 2774. At the mention of the celestial bestowment world, the 3 Peak Lords and Peak Grotto Heaven Realm Immortal Kings couldn't help but show some respect. Of the 3,000 realms, the celestial bestowment world is the one we can't afford to offend the most, Lu Yun said solemnly. Even the combined might of many great realms may not be able to shake it. Yulan nodded and said, the strength of the celestial tribute world is indeed unfathomable. Even if an imperial monarch expert enters the celestial tribute world, they have to be well-behaved and can't violate the rules of the celestial tribute world. Otherwise, they'll die without a doubt. Su Zimo's expression shifted as he picked up on the implication. Have great emperors died in the celestial bestowment world? Yes, Lu Yun said. As far as I know, none of the great emperors who wanted to enter the celestial bestowment world to explore its secrets or behave atrociously there were spared. Su Zimo fell silent, deep in thought. This celestial bestowment world was indeed mysterious. Not only had it stood strong through the many eras, but it was also feared by the sword world. After a while, Su Zimo asked, since the celestial bestowment world is so powerful, why would it give up the ore so easily? Brother Su, you may not know this, but the celestial bestowment world is the largest merchant guild in the upper world. Apart from the free trade markets of all races, there's also the Celestial Bestowment Pavilion. The Celestial Bestowment Pavilion houses countless rare treasures from the upper world. It's no exaggeration to say that if a treasure isn't in the pavilion, it'll be very difficult to find it anywhere else. Then what kind of treasure do I need to prepare in exchange for the ore? Su Zimo asked. When certain rare treasures reached a certain level of rarity, it was difficult to estimate their worth in terms of origin spirit stones. Most of the time, they were bartered with other treasures. Celestial Bestowment Gold was one such treasure. There's no need for any treasures, just head straight to the Celestial Bestowment World. After a pause, he smiled mysteriously. You don't need origin spirit stones or treasures to buy things in the pavilion. You'll know when you get there. Su Zimo asked, when are we leaving? After all, the great white mysterious gold stone was the peak treasure prepared for the burial sword peak. As the peak master of the burial sword peak, no matter what, he had to go to the celestial tribute world to take a look. Tomorrow morning, Lu Yun replied, we're just letting you know. We'll have to ask Lin Xuanjun and the others later. Lin Xuanjun? Su Zimo was a little surprised and asked, she's going too. In the past 1,000 years, very few true disciples had come to the burial sword peak. Lin Xuanjun had come 3 times and stayed in front of the burial sword peak for a long time before leaving. Lu Yun nodded with a smile. Whether or not we'll be able to buy the ore will depend on Lin Xuanjun. Yulan shook her head slightly and said, after all, Sun Jin has yet to comprehend the fairy-slaying sword. He has no match in the realm of true self in our sword world, but when compared to the top real spirits in the 3,000 realms, he is still lacking. Any peak true spirit with a combat art will be enough to defeat her. True spirit was a collective term for all true self-realm beings, including true immortals and true demons of all races. This trip to the celestial bestowment world may be an opportunity for Lin Xuanjun, Feng Su said. She's long since comprehended the fairy-slaying sword to the quasi-supreme level. She just lacks an opportunity. Only through slaughter and the baptism of blood can she manifest the true fairy-slaying sword. Yulan continued, no matter what, Sun Jin alone won't be enough to get the ore. We'll need the peak true disciples of the 8 peaks to work together. Don't worry, junior sister Yu, Lu Yun assured. Wang Dong of Swordslayer Peak has refined his cultivation and improved his battle strength over the years. He'll do his best to support Lin Xuanjun. Feng Su added, Shen Yu of Mirage Sword Peak will also come along. Su Zimo had a rough idea of what was going on. This trip to the celestial bestowment world might involve battles between peak true immortals. They didn't include Su Zimo and his buried sword peak in their conversation, but it wasn't because they were looking down on him. It was because Su Zimo was only a celestial true immortal at the moment. They were all true immortals, but there was a gap of 2 whole realms between them. The gap was simply too great. In their eyes, even if Su Zimo had comprehended the fairy-slaying sword, he wouldn't be able to tap into the true power of the combat art. He was far from the level of a peak true immortal. The next morning, Su Zimo arrived at the Myriad Swords Palace early in the morning with Kitsune. It didn't take long for him to arrive with Wang Dong and Feng Su with Xinyu. It seemed that the sword world attached great importance to this trip to the celestial bestowment world. Apart from Lu Yun, Swordslayer Peak had only brought Wang Dong, a peak Dongshu true immortal. It was the same for the other sword peaks. For example, Gong Sun Yu of the 5-element sword peak, Sword Immortal Tai Lai of the extreme sword peak, Li Shui of the demonic sword peak, Monk Juejian of the Zen sword peak, and Qin Zhong of the dominating sword peak. Yun Ting was in closed-door cultivation and didn't accompany them. Yu Lan, the peak master of the ultimate sword peak, and Lin Xuanjun were the last to arrive. Su Zimo had never interacted with Lin Xuanjun before. He'd only glimpsed her from afar, and this was his first time observing her up close. Lin Xuanjun was indeed very beautiful. She was not inferior to the 4 fairies. However, she was expressionless and aloof. She didn't look to the side after arriving and exuded an unapproachable aura. She didn't greet anyone. Lin Xuanjun seemed to sense Su Zimo's gaze and suddenly looked up. Lin Xuanjun nodded slightly in Su Zimo's direction. This greatly surprised Su Zimo and caught him off guard. He blinked and didn't return the greeting. By the time he reacted, Lin Xuanjun had already withdrawn her gaze. Although Su Zimo was a little confused, he didn't think too much of it. Everyone from the celestial bestowment world had arrived. Apart from the peak lords, the other 8 sword peaks were all peak true immortals. As for buried sword peak, Peak Lord Su Zimo was only a celestial true immortal. He looked a little out of the ordinary when he stood shoulder to shoulder with the others. Kitsune's cultivation was even lower and couldn't compare to Wang Dong and the others at all. There were only 2 true immortals in buried sword peak. No matter what, Su Zimo had to take Kitsune with him to broaden her horizons in the celestial bestowment world. Ha! Overlord Sword Peak Lord laughed. It's rare for all 9 peak lords of the sword world to have all 5 of us show up at the same time. Lu Yun Yulan, Feng Su, Bai Tianxing, and Su Zimo of Buried Sword Peak were present for this trip to the celestial bestowment world. Lu Yun also smiled. It's a good opportunity for Brother Su to show his face when we arrive at the celestial bestowment world. Let the myriad races in the upper world see the peak lord of our sword world's 9th peak. Let's go! Lu Yun's group arrived at the Myriad Swords Palace's teleportation hall and activated the transportation formation. They disappeared in a flash of light. Chapter 2775. Most realms were too far apart from each other. One had to pass through the endless cosmos, so there were very few teleportation formations that could be used directly. Moreover, it was also a potential risk to allow other races to teleport into one's own realm. It wasn't easy to teleport through the endless cosmos. Even immortal kings who had the ability to tear through the void didn't dare to travel through spatial tunnels recklessly. This was because there were many unknown dangers hidden in the endless cosmos. For example, some forbidden lands or black holes in the cosmos. Even immortal kings could easily die if they were sucked into them. Su Zimo and the others left through the Sword Realm's teleportation formation. Lu Yun and the other 3 immortal kings controlled an immortal boat spirit treasure to travel through the spatial tunnels. Lu Yun and the others kept an eye on the map to prevent them from deviating from the route. If they encountered danger, they could avoid it in time. Due to the great distance, it would take several days to reach the celestial tribute world, even with an immortal king leading the group through the spatial tunnels. The immortal boat sped along, but the group could still appreciate the magnificence of the upper world's boundless cosmos through the spatial tunnels. Only in the vast sea of stars could they feel their own insignificance. Apart from the 4 immortal kings, Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, Sword Immortal Tai Lai, and the others were all excited and chatted happily. They hadn't left the Sword Realm for a long time. Moreover, they were heading to the mysterious celestial tribute world this time. Li Shui, who carried a pitch-black longsword on his back, said, "Usually, we're restrained when we spar with our fellow disciples. I hope we can fight to our heart's content in the celestial tribute world this time." The disciples of the Sword Realm had very strict requirements for sparring. Not only did they have to be of the same cultivation level, but they couldn't use any Yuan spirit's secret techniques or fight to the death. Even those who cultivated the Sword Dao of Slaughter had to hold back. Gong Sun Yu smiled. "Don't worry, Brother Li. When we reach the fiend battlefield, we can fight to our heart's content. There's no need to hold back." Fiend battlefield? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Before he could ask, Lu Yun suddenly turned his head and looked at Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others. He said seriously, "Don't be careless. The fiend battlefield is extraordinary. There are many top experts among the sinful spirits and evil spirits. Their battle strength is no weaker than yours." Yu Lan also nodded and said, "Not to mention the few of you, even Lin Xuanjun has to be a little careful inside. When the time comes, you can't be separated. You must ensure your own safety first." Feng Su added, "Moreover, almost all the true immortals who dare to go to the celestial tribute world are the geniuses of their respective worlds. None of them are easy to deal with. Fighting is not allowed in the celestial tribute world, but it's hard to say in the demonic battlefield." "What is the demonic battlefield that you were talking about?" Su Zimo was perplexed. He didn't know what the fiend battlefield, sin spirits, or what they had to do with the celestial bestowment realm. Actually, the demonic battlefield is... Lu Yun smiled and was about to explain, but his expression suddenly changed before he could finish. He looked outside the spatial tunnel with a grave expression and gradually frowned. The others on the Sword World had also noticed the abnormality outside. Through the spatial tunnel, they could see the stars outside covered in a faint layer of bloody mist. No one knew what was going on. The immortal boat gradually slowed down, allowing them to get a better view. In the starry sky outside, there was a scarlet and wide river of blood. There were countless corpses floating in it, and it was a ghastly sight to behold. The river of blood flowed quietly in space, its edges unseen. The number of corpses in it was innumerable, like the sands of the Ganges. It was too gruesome. Even in the spatial tunnel, those in the Sword World could smell the stench of blood. They were shocked and couldn't bear to see it. So many people had died. There were at least 100 million of them. What had happened here? Yu Lan frowned and said gravely, "Judging from the location, this should be the 7 Stars Sword World." Lu Yun nodded. "These corpses are all cultivators from the 7 Stars Sword World." 7 Stars Sword World? That sounded familiar. Su Zimo fell into deep thought. He quickly recalled that when the 9th Sword Peak had been established, some lower realms had come to congratulate it, including those from the 7 Stars Sword World. At that time, it had been an immortal king from the 7 Stars Sword World who'd come with gifts. "Let's go out and take a look," Lu Yun whispered. He steered the boat through the spatial tunnel's barrier and returned to the cosmos outside. In space, everyone could feel the stench of blood even more clearly. It was suffocating. He steered the boat slowly over the river of blood. The crowd lowered their heads to look. They were able to clearly see the miserable corpses floating in the river of blood. Some had died with their eyes wide open. Some had their heads smashed into pieces. Some had been chopped into several pieces. Most of the corpses were arcane, earth, and sky origin realm cultivators who hadn't even condensed a Dao fruit. Although Su Zimo was used to seeing death, he couldn't help but shudder at the sight of hundreds of millions of corpses in front of him. Dai Yu and the human emperor had both told him of the cruelty and bloodshed of the upper world. He'd personally experienced many hardships in the world of celestials. But now, when he saw the scene before his eyes, he truly felt what cruelty and bloodshed were. Feng Su said grimly, "These cultivators must have died not long ago. Let's go ahead and take a look." Lu Yun said grimly and steered the boat forward, following the source of the river of blood. Soon, 7 enormous, lightless stars covered in cracks appeared in space ahead of them, their surroundings suffused with the color of blood. Blood was still flowing slowly through the cracks of the 7 stars. The blood continued to gather in the starry sky, forming the river of blood that stretched for thousands of miles. The location of these 7 stars was once the 7-star sword realm. However, the 7-star sword world had been reduced to rubble, leaving only endless corpses floating in the river of blood. It wouldn't be long before the 7 huge stars would completely collapse and disappear into the boundless starry sky. Silence reigned on the boat. Everyone stared at the scene in front of them in silence for a long time. After a while, Yulan sighed. The 7-star sword world is destroyed, just like that. Fury surged in his heart as he clenched his fists. It's one thing to destroy a realm, but to slaughter hundreds of millions of lives? That's too cruel and heartless. Who could have done this? Lord Bai Tianxing of Overlord Sword Peak frowned. Feng Su shook his head. There are too many powerhouses capable of destroying a realm, but I don't think it's the work of a single person. A realm must have dispatched an army to encircle and annihilate them. Chapter 2776. For a low-level realm like the 7-star sword realm, the strongest cultivator was only an immortal king. Any heaven-rank force in the divine firmament celestial realm could easily destroy the 7-star sword realm. For such a low-level realm to survive in the upper world, they had to be careful, as if they were treading on thin ice. They either attached themselves to some super realm or tried their best to befriend the surrounding realms. But even so, he still couldn't escape this calamity. At this moment, Lu Yun's consciousness moved and his gaze fell on one of the stars. He said in a low voice, "There's movement over there, let's go take a look." The people of the sword realm stood on the immortal boat and turned into a stream of light, speeding toward the broken star. Not long after, they arrived at the periphery of the broken star. On the star, there were 2 camps fighting fiercely. Corpses were everywhere, and the smell of blood soared into the sky. One camp had hundreds of thousands of cultivators, most of whom were heavenly immortals. Among them, there were hundreds of true immortals. Banners fluttered in the wind, and the sound of fighting filled the air. On the other side, there were only about 10,000 people left. They were surrounded by the army of hundreds of thousands of cultivators and were fighting a bloody battle. The difference between the 2 sides was too great. Whether it was in terms of numbers or strength, it was a world of difference. Among the 10,000 people trapped, there were less than 10 true immortals who were still fighting. Even so, this group of people was not afraid. They protected each other and fought with their last bit of blood before finally collapsing in a pool of blood. In midair, there were 6 immortal kings with terrifying auras. They were looking down at this scene coldly. If these 6 immortal kings were to attack, the 10,000 trapped cultivators would not last more than a breath. The 6 of them only watched coldly, their eyes filled with mockery and cruelty. This was a complete massacre. Among the trapped cultivators, a true immortal was covered in wounds. His face was pale and his aura was weak. He was unable to fight anymore. However, his eyes were still wide open, and his expression was unyielding. He hugged the banner in his arms tightly and raised it high. The pattern on the banner corresponded to the 7 stars in the starry sky. There were hundreds of millions of cultivators in the seven-star sword realm. Now, there were only 10,000 people left, and the number was still decreasing. In the camp where the seven-star sword realm cultivators were slaughtered, the picture on the banner was rather strange and terrifying. It was actually a huge eye, as if it was looking at the people of the sword realm. It's the Heaven's Eye world. Feng Su frowned solemnly. Su Zimo had long noticed that the group of cultivators looked similar to humans. However, when they released their Dao arts, a crack would appear on their glabella. It was the Heavenly Eye race that he had come into contact with in Tianhuang mainland. Bai Tianxing said in a deep voice, "The immortal king in the lead should be the Cold Eye King of the Heaven's Eye world. He is very powerful and cannot be underestimated. Save them." With that, he steered the boat into the fray. But Yu Lan stopped him and said in a low voice, "The Celestial Eye clan is an extraordinary world as well. If we act rashly, then we'll probably have another formidable enemy for the sword dimension. The seven-star sword realm is on friendly terms with the sword realm, not its subordinate. We don't need to get involved." Lu Yun looked at the hellish scene around him and the cultivators of the seven-star sword world who were still fighting for their lives on the planet. He felt indignant. Is the Sky Eye world a super major world that allows it to slaughter all life and do as it pleases? Are we supposed to stand by and do nothing if the seven-star sword realm isn't our subordinate? Are we supposed to turn a blind eye and stand by today just because we're afraid of making enemies for the sword realm? Yu Lan didn't know what to say in the face of Lu Yun's question. Feng Su whispered, "It would have been better if we'd arrived earlier, but so many of the seven-star sword realm have died. There are only 10,000 left. If we become enemies with the Heaven's Eye world because of these 10,000 people, then the losses outweigh the gains." Lu Yun turned around and looked at Feng Su. Lu Yun turned around and stared intently at Feng Su. "So the remaining 10,000 or so cultivators of the seven-star sword world aren't humans?" he asked slowly. "Do they deserve to die?" Bai Tianxing wanted to say something but hesitated. He knew that it wasn't that Peak Lords Yu Lan and Feng Su didn't want to save the cultivators, but that they were weighing the pros and cons and speaking from the perspective of the sword realm. However, their words were a little cold and unreasonable. Suddenly, Lu Yun looked at Su Zimo with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. "Brother Su, what do you say?" There were 5 Peak Lords present. If one remained silent and 3 opposed, Lu Yun wouldn't be able to act alone even if he wanted to. Su Zimo said, "If we cultivators have to be overly cautious when it comes to saving people, then there's no need for us to cultivate any sword Dao in the future." "Exactly." Lu Yun perked up at this. Yu Lan and Feng Su sighed softly, a hint of shame on their faces. The true immortals of the various sword peaks, like Wang Dong and Gong Sunyu, had long since grown impatient. Unlike the 2 Peak Lords, they didn't have too many concerns. They were young, hot-blooded, and cultivated sword Dao. Upholding justice in their hearts, they should stand up when they saw injustice. "Let's go." Yu Lan quickly came to a decision. After a brief disagreement, the 5 Peak Lords quickly came to an agreement and sped toward the battlefield. The Sword Realm's cultivators arrived in the blink of an eye. Lu Yun unleashed the powerful aura of a Grotto Heaven Realm cultivator, instantly enveloping the entire battlefield. Most of the cultivators fighting were Empyrean immortals and true immortals. Unable to withstand the pressure of an immortal king's consciousness, they all came to a halt. The originally fierce battle also paused for a moment. But soon, another immortal king's consciousness surged in and confronted Lu Yun's, greatly reducing the pressure on the cultivators on the battlefield. It was the leader of the 6 immortal kings who'd neutralized Lu Yun's consciousness. The Celestial Eye clan had long since gone berserk. How could they stop so easily? Having regained their freedom, the Celestial Eye clan charged into the 7-star sword realm's cultivators again without hesitation when they saw that immortal kings from other realms were holding the line. Moreover, the Celestial Eye clan seemed to have guessed that something might happen in a while, so they attacked even more viciously. They wanted to kill the remaining cultivators as quickly as possible. There weren't many of them to begin with, and their numbers were dwindling with every passing moment. Now, there were only a few thousand of them left. Lu Yun's face darkened. As an immortal king, he naturally couldn't enter the battlefield and bully the weak by attacking the Celestial Eye clan's true immortals and Empyrean immortals. Taking a deep breath, Lu Yun cupped his hands at the 6 immortal kings of the Celestial Eye clan. Fellow Taoists of the Celestial Eye clan, the 7-star sword realm is almost destroyed and hundreds of millions of lives have perished. Please stop and don't kill them all. Lu Yun wanted to try communicating with the Celestial Eye clan. It would be best if he could avoid a direct confrontation with the Celestial Eye clan. So it's the Sword Slayer Peak Lord. The leader of the Celestial Eye clan, an immortal king named Han Mu, glanced at the Sword Realm cultivators and raised an eyebrow. As far as I know, the 7-star Sword Realm has nothing to do with the Sword Realm. It's best if you don't meddle in other people's business, lest you draw trouble to yourselves. Chapter 2777. In fact, the Cold Eye King and the other 5 immortal kings had long noticed the Sword World's people. However, the Cold Eye King was fearless and didn't care. Even if the group from Sword World wanted to stop this matter, they wouldn't be able to. There were only 4 immortal kings in the Sword World's party, and the remaining 10 were all true immortals. The battlefield below was mostly filled with Empyrean immortals and true immortals fighting. The 4 immortal kings wanted to save people, but they couldn't do it themselves. How could the remaining 10 true immortals fight against the Celestial Eye World's army of hundreds of true immortals? Moreover, even if the 4 peak lords of the Sword World were determined to fight, the 6 immortal kings could still hold them off. As long as they could stall for time, the remaining thousands of people from the 7-star Sword World would be drowned by the Celestial Eye clan's army. Even if Lu Yun and the rest were determined to save people, they could send a message to the Sword World for reinforcements. It would take a long time to go and return. The Cold Eye King had calculated everything, which was why he was so unyielding. Yulan said in a low voice, "Cold Eye King, I don't know what kind of deep grudge you have with the 7-star Sword World, but no matter what, there's no need to kill them all and commit such inhumane acts." Bai Tianxing also said, "That's right. An eye for an eye, an eye for an eye. You can't expect everyone from the 7-star Sword World to offend you, right?" The cold-eyed emperor let out a hollow laugh as the wound on his forehead expanded, emitting an icy aura as he slowly said, "If Nangu is trying to protect his disciple, and even dared to lie to me, then don't blame me for killing all of you. Since he dares to challenge me, I'll make him pay the price and bury his 7-star Sword World with him." Nangu King was the 7-star Sword World's realm lord. Every realm in the 3,000 worlds had a different situation. Some realms had a realm lord, while others were ruled by multiple emperors. The Sword World was one such realm. There were also realms like the Celestial Realm, which was split into 3 domains all year round and had no realm lord in name. Lu Yun was enraged and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He shouted, "You want to vent your anger on the entire 7-star Sword World just because of Nangu King and his disciple? Cold Eye King, you're too tyrannical and cruel." The Cold Eye Monarch was fearless and did not back down. He said coldly, "This is how the Heavenly Eye clan does things. What can you do to me?" Another Sky Eye race king sneered, "You want to save him with just a dozen of you? Let me advise you all to mind your own business. Don't get yourself involved. You'll regret it later." Another Sky Eye race king laughed. At this moment, on the immortal boat, 2 figures sped towards the battlefield at almost the same time. In the blink of an eye, the 2 had already charged into the battlefield. One of them was holding a long sword. His figure was ethereal and graceful like a dragon amidst the biting cold sword light. It was Lin Xuanzhen. Lin Xuanzhen held the immortal sword in his hand. Wherever he went, no one could bear the brunt of his attack. Blood spurted everywhere as true spirit-level Heavenly Eye race members fell from the sky, dead. In the blink of an eye, Lin Xuanzhen had killed 4 peak true spirit-level Heavenly Eye race members. The other figure landed in the middle of the 7-star sword cultivators. He extended his fair hand and smashed the head of a Heavenly Eye race true spirit into pieces, saving the true immortal carrying the 7-star Sword World's flag. This figure was wearing a green robe and black hair. It was the 9th Sword Peak's peak master, Su Zimo. The true immortal carrying the 7-star sword world's flag was called Meng Hao. He had followed the 7-star sword world's immortal king to the burial sword peak with congratulatory gifts. Su Zimo had some impression of this person. Meng Hao was now covered in wounds. His aura was weak and he was exhausted. He could not hold on any longer. He was only holding on with his tenacious and unyielding will. He carried the blood-soaked flag on his shoulder and leaned against it. It was unknown whether he was carrying the flag or the flag was supporting his broken body. A heavenly eye race true spirit targeted Meng Hao. He broke through the line of defense and charged towards him. He could not stop him at all. Su Zimo was unwilling to see him die here, so he saved him. Sword World, it's you. Meng Hao's bloodshot eyes seemed to recognize Su Zimo. His lips moved as he muttered softly. Soon after, his mind relaxed and he could not hold on any longer. He fainted on the spot. Su Zimo supported him with one hand and gently placed him on the ground. He held the 7-star sword world's flag with the other and let the blood-soaked flag flutter on the battlefield. In reality, Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others on the immortal boat could not bear to listen any longer. However, the immortal kings on both sides were still in a confrontation. Even if they wanted to make a move, they were still afraid and did not dare act rashly. Now that Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjun had entered the battlefield, Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others felt their blood boil. They no longer had any scruples and charged down one after another. In this situation, as immortal kings, it was indeed not good for the 4 peak masters to make a move. Once a battle broke out between immortal kings, it was easy for them to lose control and cause the situation to escalate. It could even lead to a realm war. Sword World and Celestial Eye World were both super major worlds, so Lu Yun and the other peak masters were extremely cautious. The best solution was for Lin Xuanjun and the other true immortals to step in and save the cultivators of the 7-star sword world. Heh! The Cold Eye King saw Su Zimo and the others make a move and could not help but scoff. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. You overestimate yourself. Is that so? Lu Yun Yulan and the others sneered when they heard this. They had just roughly scanned the battlefield. Although there were hundreds of true spirit cultivators on the Celestial Eye clan side, they did not find any top geniuses. The strongest among them was about as strong as Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others. They were no threat to Lin Xuanjun at all. As for the 10 people from Sword World, apart from Su Zimo and Kitsune of the 9th Sword Peak, whose combat strength was negligible, the other 8 were the top true immortals of the 8 Sword Peaks. Even if the 8 of them fought individually, they could still sweep through hundreds of thousands of Celestial Eye clan soldiers. Now, in order to save the remaining cultivators of the 7-star sword world, the 8 of them, with Lin Xuanjun as the leader, formed a sword formation with both offense and defense. This sword formation was a simplified version of the myriad sword formation around Sword World. The 8 of them represented the 8 sword peaks. Although it was a simplified version, the 8 of them were all top true immortals. They had long since memorized the myriad sword formation and had great chemistry with each other. They could fully unleash the sword formation's full power. The hum of swords rang incessantly. 10,000 rays of sword chi streaked through the air, crisscrossing between heaven and earth. Sword chi soared into the clouds, sharp and sharp, forming an impenetrable sword net that seemed to be able to crush everything. Lin Xuanjun, Wang Dong, and the others formed a sword formation that protected Su Zimo, Kitsune, and thousands of 7-star sword world cultivators in the middle. They actually withstood the attacks of hundreds of Celestial Eye clan true spirits and hundreds of thousands of Celestial Eye clan soldiers. Not only that, under the myriad sword formation formed by the 8 of them, Celestial Eye clan true spirits were constantly dying on the spot. Any living being that entered the myriad sword formation would be minced into a bloody mist. Chapter 2778. On the battlefield, hundreds of thousands of Heavenly Eye race troops were gathered. They were densely packed on the ground and covered the skies, surrounding thousands of sword cultivators as they attacked relentlessly with ferocious attacks. The blood marks on the glabella of the heavenly eye race living beings split open one after another like a third eye that released all sorts of powers. The heavenly eye race had a similar bloodline to humans. However, they were born with a third eye in their glabella known as the heavenly eye. It was the heavenly eye that allowed the living beings of this race to be reborn and transformed completely, rising to the top of the thousands of races. Typically speaking, the heavenly eye in their glabella was where the strongest powers of the heavenly eye race were gathered. However, no matter how the heavenly eye race army attacked, they could not shake the thousand-sword formation formed by the top 8 perfected immortals of the sword world. The battle was intense as blood mist filled the air and sand flew everywhere. The heavenly eye race army attacked multiple times but could not suppress the sharpness of the thousand-sword formation. Before long, thousands of heavenly eye race corpses were added to the battlefield. The death of thousands of clansmen was nothing more than a drop in the ocean for an army of hundreds of thousands. However, this scene had a huge impact on the hearts of countless heavenly eye race beings. One had to know that among the several thousand heavenly eye clansmen that died, just the true spirit heavenly eye clansmen alone numbered close to 100. However, less than 10 perfected spirits of the heavenly eye race were killed in the encirclement of the 7-star sword world this time round. To think that the addition of the 10 cultivators of the sword world would change the situation completely. The remaining heavenly eye race perfected spirits had wary expressions and became cautious in their attacks, not daring to advance rashly. Apart from the heavenly eye race perfected spirit that Su Zimo killed when he first descended, he did not have much of a chance to attack like Kitsune after that. Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu and the others joined forces with Lin Xuanjun right away to form the thousand-sword formation. Together with Kitsune and the surviving sword cultivators of the 7-star sword world, they were protected in the center of the formation, the safest region. The 8 of them worked together with great rapport and the sword formation they formed was impenetrable as well. Slaughter Sword Dao, 5-element Sword Dao, Extreme Sword Dao, Absolute Sword Dao, Illusion Sword Dao, Overlord Sword Dao, Demon Sword Dao, and Zen Sword Dao. Lin Xuanjun and the other top perfected immortals used the 10,000 sword formation to unleash the 8 great sword Daos to the extreme. Sword Chi rampaged, sword intent surged, and brilliant brilliance intertwined. Tens of 10,000 Heavenly Eyes clan's army couldn't break in, and Su Zimo wanted to break out, but he didn't have a better chance. He could break this sword formation and then rush out, but there was no need for that. If the 8 of them opened the sword formation and let him out, the operation of the sword formation would definitely reveal a flaw. Now that the battle was intense, this move might backfire and the sword formation might be destroyed by the Heavenly Eye race. Su Zimo saw that the myriad sword formation formed by Lin Xuanjun and the others had already blocked the hundreds of thousands of Heavenly Eye clan creatures. There was no danger, so he did not take action. In truth, as the Peak Lord of Burial Sword Peak, he'd naturally cultivated this myriad sword formation as well. However, Lin Xuanjun and the others had practiced sword formations together for many years and had great teamwork. They'd formed the sword formation as soon as they entered the battlefield and hadn't given him a chance to join in. If he joined in now, the sword formation would still stop and reveal a flaw. Su Zimo and Kitsune wove through the 7 celestial sword worlds crowd and placed many pills in the hands of the sword cultivators, saving as many as possible. Lu Yun Yulan and the others were calm, unsurprised by this scene. Not far away, the expressions of the 6 Heavenly Eye clan kings darkened. The scene before them had indeed exceeded their expectations. Normally speaking, with the Heavenly Eye clan's methods, they would have a clear advantage against most creatures of the same level. Moreover, they currently had the advantage of numbers. This was a one-sided situation. There were 10 true immortals in the sword world, and one of them was at the Unity Realm. What could a celestial immortal do? However, the Cold Eye King hadn't expected that apart from Su Zimo and Kitsune, the remaining 8 true immortals were all geniuses among true immortals. Lin Xuanjun was even the first true immortal of the sword world. Of course, the Heavenly Eye clan had similar top true spirits, but the battle that destroyed the 7 celestial sword world was nearing its end. The one who'd been here had long since left. If that person had been here, he would have definitely been able to break the sword formation formed by the 8 true immortals. The Cold Eye King looked at the battlefield, his expression uncertain. He didn't say a word. The situation was gradually becoming clearer. If he still didn't give the order to stop, more and more Heavenly Eye clan members would die here. Stop! The Cold Eye King suddenly roared. Hundreds of thousands of Heavenly Eye clan soldiers were relieved of a heavy burden and retreated from the battlefield, afraid that they would be swept into the terrifying sword formation. The Cold Eye King clenched his fists behind his back and slowly turned his head to look at Lu Yun and the others. He said hatefully, "These true immortals of the sword world are really something. If I'm not wrong, these 8 should be the strongest true immortals of the sword world." Lu Yun said faintly, "I warned you. You can only blame yourself for being blind." Ha! The Cold Eye King suddenly laughed, his gaze cold. The heavenly eye between his brows had opened, emitting a bone-chilling aura. The Cold Eye King's 3 eyes looked at Lu Yun and the others at the same time. He nodded and said slowly, "Good, good, good. I'll remember these people." Lu Yun's expression turned cold as he emitted a terrifying murderous intent. He stared at the Cold Eye King and said, "Cold Eye King, I'm warning you. You're a peak king, so you better not have any ideas about them." Between the major realms, especially the super major realms, there was an unspoken rule. Generally speaking, the experts of the major realms wouldn't attack cultivators of lower realms. This was because it was too dangerous and could easily go out of control. If the Cold Eye King ignored his status and attacked Lin Xuanzhen, then the Sword World's Sovereign Emperor would have a reason to attack the Cold Eye King. At that time, the Sovereign Emperor of the Heavenly Eye world wouldn't sit idly by. If the situation escalated, it would turn into a war between the Sovereign Emperors, or even a realm war. If it was a battle between equals, even if one side suffered heavy losses and resented the other, they couldn't say anything. They could only blame themselves for being inferior. The Cold Eye King sneered. "Don't worry, I don't need to do anything to deal with you sword cultivators. Do you think that my Heavenly Eye world doesn't have powerful true spirits?" Lu Yun, Yulan, and the other peak lords seemed to think of something and frowned at the same time. The Cold Eye King continued, "If I'm not wrong, the 4 of you are taking these 10 true immortals to the celestial tribute world, right?" Lu Yun and the other peak lords didn't move, but their hearts sank. They'd only brought 10 true immortals, and 8 of them were peak true immortals. It was most likely that they were going to the celestial tribute world. This couldn't be hidden from the Cold Eye King. The Cold Eye King grinned. "It's fine if you don't say anything, we'll see. I'll remember today's debt for now, but before I leave, I have some words for you. The blood of the Heavenly Eye clan will not be spilled in vain." With that, the Cold Eye King gave the order and left the 7-star sword world with hundreds of thousands of Heavenly Eye clan soldiers. They quickly disappeared into the vast sea of stars. End of chapter. Chapter 2779. Though the Celestial Eye army had left, the 7-star sword realm couldn't be saved. Only a few thousand cultivators and disciples remained. There were no immortal kings among them, and only 7 true immortals had survived. Under Su Zimo's treatment, Meng Hao had regained consciousness. His internal injuries were gradually recovering, and his cheeks were ruddy. "Many thanks to the seniors of the sword world for saving us." When Meng Hao and the others woke up, they bowed towards Su Zimo and the others right away. However, most of the surviving cultivators still hadn't recovered from their shock. They looked around at the corpses around them, their eyes empty and their expressions numb. This had been a huge blow to them. Su Zimo looked at Meng Hao. "What happened? How did the Celestial Eye tribe get involved?" The Cold-Eyed King had mentioned it before, but he hadn't gone into detail. No one in the sword world knew the cause of this calamity. Meng Hao fell silent for a moment before slowly saying, "Senior brother Li Xian was pursued by a Sky Eye race true spirit in the fiendish battlefield of the celestial tribute world. Senior brother Li Xian was forced to counterattack and blinded the Sky Eye of the Sky Eye race true spirit. Normally speaking, after cultivating to the true immortal realm, even if one's body was shattered, one would be able to repair it with supreme magic power, let alone blinding one's eye. However, The eye was different. It was the most powerful part of the clan, where many combat arts converged. Once damaged, it was very difficult to recover. Gong Sun Yu snorted. He failed to kill someone and even blinded his eye. He can only blame himself for being inferior. If it were me, I would have blinded his eye and taken his life. Meng Hao glanced at Gong Sun Yu and opened his mouth to speak, but hesitated. In the end, he only sighed softly. As a true immortal of the sword world, Gong Sun Yu naturally had the confidence to do so. Senior brother Li Xian, on the other hand, was only a true immortal of the seven-star sword world. How would he dare offend a celestial eye? He'd blinded the true immortal's eye out of helplessness. The fiendish demon battlefield is a battle between true spirits of the same level. You can't blame others if you lose your life, let alone get injured. Could it be that just because a Sky Eye true spirit of the Sky Eye race was blinded, the Sky Eye world led an army to slaughter the living beings of this world? Meng Hao said, that Celestial Eye true spirit is the youngest son of the Cold Eye monarch. No wonder. Yulan and the others looked at each other and murmured softly. Meng Hao continued, senior brother Li Xian knew that he had caused a huge disaster. He immediately returned to the seven-star sword world and reported this matter to Master. At the same time, the letter from the Cold Eye King was also sent to Master, asking him to hand over senior brother Li Xian. The Master Meng Hao was referring to was the seven-star sword realm's master, the Southern Valley King. Master knew that senior brother Li Xian was not to be blamed for this. However, Master also knew that the Cold Eye King would not let this matter rest. Thus, he arranged for senior brother Li Xian to secretly escape and then send a message to the other large realms to ask for help. Lu Yun, Yulan, and the others looked at each other and nodded. Wang Xiu of the Southern Valley lived up to his name as a sword immortal, and he was indeed the lord of a realm. He tried his best to protect his disciples instead of betraying them. If they were in Wang Xiu's shoes, they wouldn't be able to think of a better solution. Meng Hao paused here, seeming to think of something. His body trembled and he gasped for breath, as if he was about to suffocate. Su Zimo softly chanted a few Buddhist mantras, calming Meng Hao's terrified heart. Meng Hao took a deep breath and continued, who would have thought that the Cold Eye King would be here long ago and seal off the seven-star sword world? Not only did senior brother Li Xian die, but Master's message also didn't get out. This angered the Cold Eye King. He sealed off the seven-star sword world and wants to kill half of its inhabitants as punishment. At this point, Meng Hao could no longer continue. The remaining sword cultivators of the seven-star sword world had tears in their eyes as they silently shed tears. Lu Yun and the others sighed softly with complicated expressions. The Southern Valley King wouldn't even hand over a disciple, let alone kill half of the seven-star sword world's inhabitants. Cultivators of the seven-star sword world would rather break than bend. They would never resign themselves to death. The Southern Valley King would definitely lead the sword cultivators under his command and fight to the death. Even if there were only a few thousand people left, Meng Hao and the others still wouldn't give in. They used their last bit of strength to fight the Celestial Eye clan. In the eyes of the Cold Eye King, the inhabitants of a lowly realm like the seven-star sword world were ants. How dare they lie to him and resist? In his fury, he ordered the slaughter of an entire realm. Even if they destroyed an entire realm and slaughtered hundreds of millions of inhabitants, it was just like stepping on a few ants in the eyes of the Cold Eye King and the others. They didn't care at all. Yulan sighed softly. The Southern Valley King is known for his chivalry and kindness. Who would have thought that he would encounter such a calamity? Lu Yun said coldly, the Cold Eye King is too cruel. He slaughtered an entire realm just because his son's skills were inferior and his celestial eye was blinded. Bai Tianxing said, the Cold Eye King's actions are also sending a strong signal to the other realms, making them fear the celestial eye world and not dare to provoke them. Yulan said, as far as I know, there's a true spirit in the celestial eye world who was born with the yin-yang eye and has comprehended a supreme combat art. He's terrifyingly strong and probably ranks in the top 5 among all the true spirits of the upper world. The Cold Eye King has already guessed that we're heading to the celestial tribute world. If we meet the Celestial Eye clan there, there'll be trouble. Lu Yun said solemnly, there's more than one true spirit in the Celestial Eye world who has comprehended a supreme combat art in this generation. Bai Tianxing said, the Celestial Eye clan's Celestial Eye allows them to comprehend combat arts much better than other races. In every generation, the Celestial Eye world will give birth to at least one true spirit who has comprehended a supreme combat art. What do you mean? Are you going to return home now? Feng Su frowned. We're already here. There's less than 3 days left before we reach the Celestial Tribute World. Lu Yun, Yu Lan, and Bai Tianxing fell silent, somewhat hesitant. Feng Su continued, moreover, we're heading to the Celestial Tribute World for Great White Arcane Gold. If we miss this opportunity, who knows when we'll meet again? Yu Lan said, fighting is forbidden in the Celestial Tribute World, so there's nothing to worry about. However, if we want to trade for Great White Arcane Gold, Sun Zhen and the others must enter the Fiend battlefield. Yu Lan looked worriedly at Lin Xuanzhen, Wang Dong, and the others. Lin Xuanzhen said faintly, don't worry, Master. If we run into any danger in the Fiend battlefield, we'll leave immediately. That's right. With the Celestial Tribute Medallion, we can leave at any time. There won't be any danger, Wang Dong added. Yu Lan thought for a moment before nodding. Very well. Since we've come this far, we should take a look at the Celestial Tribute World. It'd be best if we can trade for Great White Arcane Gold, but if not, there's no need to force it. End of chapter. Chapter 2780. Feng Su looked at the thousands of sword cultivators left in the 7-star sword realm and transmitted, what do we do with them? If the sword realm left right away, the Sky Eye World army would most likely return. Moreover, the remaining cultivators were heavily injured and had almost no ability to protect themselves. Without the protection of the 7-star sword realm, they would be vulnerable to other calamities even if the Sky Eye World army didn't return. After some thought, Lu Yun looked at Meng Hao and the other cultivators. The 7-star sword realm has been destroyed. What plans do you have for the future? Are you willing to join us? Meng Hao and the other true immortals looked at each other and nodded after a moment of hesitation. Without the Sword Realm's shelter, they would have been wandering cultivators with no identity. Like rootless duckweed in the boundless cosmos, they could have died at any moment. The cosmos of the higher world was like a dark forest, filled with danger and danger. Even if they ran into a band of bandits, they wouldn't be able to stop them with their current strength. Thank you for taking us in, Senior. Meng Hao and the other sword cultivators bowed respectfully. Lu Yun nodded slightly and looked at Su Zimo. Brother Su, what do you think of having them join your 9th sword peak? There weren't many disciples in the peak, and there were only 2 true immortals. Lu Yun was doing Su Zimo a favor at no extra cost. I have no problem with that, but I don't know if they're willing. Su Zimo looked at Meng Hao and the others. The 9th sword peak was established not long ago, so its overall strength isn't high. There are only 2 true immortals, and as its peak lord, you can see my cultivation. The 7 true immortals who'd survived the 7-star sword realm were all stronger than Su Zimo. Meng Hao was one of the 3 true immortals in the Dongshu realm. Meng Hao hurriedly waved a hand. You just, peak lord. We're already very grateful that the sword realm took us in. How could we not be willing? All right. Su Zimo nodded. Then from now on, you're all disciples of the Sword Burial Peak. Greetings, Peak Lord. Meng Hao and the others endured the pain and bowed. That makes things easier. Since you're all part of the Sword World now, we can head to the Celestial Tribute World together. If Meng Hao and the others were to head to the Sword World on their own, the journey would be long, and no one knew what would happen. Following them was the safest choice. Meng Hao and the others naturally had no objections. Among the thousands of cultivators, apart from Meng Hao and a few others, most of them had never been to the Celestial Tribute World and were a little curious about it. However, they were all heavily injured. Coupled with the fact that they had just suffered a great calamity and had just lost their homes and loved ones, they were all in low spirits. Su Zimo and the others resumed their journey. They entered the spatial tunnel and headed towards the Celestial Tribute World. The vessel was enormous and more than enough to accommodate 1,000,000 people. Meng Hao and the others quietly treated their injuries while Lu Yun, Yulan, and the others stood at the bow and chatted idly. Su Zimo silently gazed at the endless starry sky through the spatial tunnel. What had happened to the seven-star sword world had filled him with many emotions. The sight of the corpses floating in the river of blood had been a great blow to him. The scene still lingered in his mind. Hundreds of millions of innocent lives had been forcibly erased, just like that. No one in the vast upper realms cared about them at all. The destruction of the seven-star sword world didn't even cause a ripple in the upper realms. Chaos had already appeared in the upper realms. In the imperial tomb, immortal Emperor Chenmu had also told him to escape as soon as possible, to stay away from the center of the upper realms and the 3,000 worlds. In truth, Su Zimo had already thought of a way out. Due to the awakening of the World Devastator Demon Emperor, the Heavenly Baron sect would have a hard time resisting him in the demon realms. No one knew the World Devastator Demon Emperor's origins or what secrets he possessed. If it wasn't absolutely necessary, Su Zimo didn't want to face him head-on. The influence of the Pure Lands and Lord of Six Brahma, or Emperor Bo Sun, was growing stronger and stronger. There was no place for him in the 9th firmament immortal realm. If nothing unexpected happened, a great war was bound to break out between the 9 firmament immortal realm, the Pure Lands, and the demon realms. If he continued to linger in the world of celestials, he would easily be swept into it. The best way was to leave the world of celestials and head to a place far away from the center of the upper realms, far away from the war, and establish a pure land. There was no difference between the upper and lower realms. All races coexisted and were equal. Su Zimo wanted to establish a brand new world and establish a pure land. However, the 7-star sword world's experience made him realize that this path was full of difficulties and dangers. Without absolute strength and confidence, even if he established such a world, he would easily be destroyed. Are you still thinking about the 7-star sword world? Lu Yun asked softly when he saw Su Zimo with a heavy heart. Su Zimo nodded. Lu Yun sighed softly. Actually, things like the 7-star sword world aren't rare in the upper realms. Some worlds are rich in special resources, but they can be robbed clean. When the flames of war engulf them, all lives are lost. Some worlds' inhabitants obtain a peerless treasure, but it can also lead to disaster and the destruction of the world. If chaos truly comes, even a super major world may not be spared, to say nothing of a lowly world like the 7-star sword world. Chaos? Calamity? Su Zimo murmured softly, seeming to understand something. You should know that the sword world suffered a calamity after the All-Heaven era. Su Zimo nodded. Yulan, the Lord of Great Sword Peak, had mentioned this to him when he'd gone to the exalted sword steel to comprehend the Tao. Lu Yun continued. Fortunately, the sword realm survived. After a few epochs, it rose to prominence again and became a super major realm. As far as I know, there were some super great realms in the past that never rose again after their decline. Some were even completely destroyed and disappeared in the river of time, leaving no trace behind. Su Zimo's heart trembled. To be called a super major world, there had to be at least 10 great emperors. But even a super major world couldn't withstand it and was completely destroyed. What kind of power, what kind of disaster was it? He didn't know if the destruction of these super major worlds was related to the calamity that swept through the 3,000 worlds, or if it was due to some other reason. 5 days later, those from the sword world finally arrived at their destination. Lu Yun drove the boat through the spatial tunnel and returned to the cosmos. He pointed in a direction and said, "That's the celestial tribute world." Everyone looked into the distance, but didn't see any realm. Lu Yun steered the boat in a streak of light and continued in that direction. Not long after, the immortal boat seemed to have crashed into a water screen. Its speed slowed down, and ripples appeared on the water screen. Those from the sword world felt as if they'd suddenly entered another world from the cosmos. The scene in front of them suddenly changed. Chapter 2781. The celestial bestowment realm didn't look very big and spacious. What came into view was an enormous island floating in space. Most conspicuous of all were the 10 thick chains that stretched out around the island, stretching across half of the starry sky. The ends of the chains disappeared into the darkness in the distance, making it impossible to tell what was on the other side. Each chain would take 10 people to wrap around it, and they were covered in rust and traces of metal clashing. That's Celestial Bestowment Island. It's the only place in the Celestial Bestowment realm that foreign cultivators can set foot in. What are those chains? Su Zimo asked. What's connected to the other end of the chains? Legend has it that the ends of the Celestial Bestowment chains are the 10 great sinful lands, where many evil spirits and sinful spirits are imprisoned. However, those areas are forbidden and no one is allowed to approach them. The 10 great sinful lands? Evil spirits and sinful spirits? Su Zimo frowned slightly and looked at the end of the 10 heaven-crowning locks in deep thought. Not only was the darkness impenetrable to the naked eye, even his consciousness would vanish when he tried to probe it. For some reason, Su Zimo felt an inexplicable sense of discomfort after arriving in the Celestial Bestowment realm. Everything around him was oppressive. After 5 days of recuperation, Meng Hao and the thousands of survivors from the Seven Stars Sword realm had recovered from their injuries and were able to move about freely. Everyone walked out of the boat's lounge and looked around curiously at the legendary Celestial Bestowment realm. Lu Yun stood at the bow of the boat and looked at the cultivators on board. This is the first time most of you have come to the Celestial Bestowment realm, so there are a few rules I must explain. There's a type of formidable restriction energy in the celestial tribute world. Besides certain areas, no conflict is allowed anywhere else. Otherwise, one would definitely be mercilessly annihilated by the restriction energy in the celestial tribute world. You may not be able to sense it, but immortal kings like me can't even release their own grotto heavens in the celestial bestowment realm. It's said that the worlds of great emperors will be suppressed in the celestial bestowment realm. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat. Even imperial emperors would be restricted in the celestial tribute world. Yulan added, so, don't take any chances. Just like here on Heaven Venerate Island, don't fight with others. The celestial bestowment world is a very special place. No matter your identity or race, you can only stay for 10 days after entering. After 10 days, if you don't take the initiative to leave, you will be obliterated by the celestial bestowment realm. After leaving, the next time you want to enter the celestial tribute world, you will have to wait 1,000 years. Although everyone felt that this rule was a little strange, they could understand it. If there were no such rules, the countless beings of the 3,000 worlds would flock here and refuse to leave. The entire celestial tribute world wouldn't be able to hold them all. Su Zimo suddenly asked, the specific area that Brother Lu mentioned just now is the evil demon battlefield that you mentioned before? He'd mentioned the fiend battlefield on his way to the celestial tribute world. However, before he could explain in detail, he encountered the Seven-Star Sword realm. Lu Yun nodded. That's right. Only in the fiend battlefield can one fight and kill as one pleases. The entrance to the fiend battlefield is on Celestial Tribute Island. Apart from Lin Xuanjun and the others, this was the first time most of the cultivators had heard of the fiend battlefield. Lu Yun explained, the fiend battlefield is similar to an ancient battlefield. It's a special space. It's called the fiend battlefield because of the many powerful fiends and sinful spirits that live there. These fiends and sinful spirits come from the 10 sinful lands. What exactly are these fiends and sinful spirits? This was not the first time Su Zimo had heard Lu Yun mention this phrase. The fiends and sinful spirits refer to some special and powerful beings. They're cruel, vicious, and inhumane, such as the Yaksha ghosts and the Shura tribe. Su Zimo's interest piqued. He'd learned from Wu Dao's primary body that the beings of the ghost realm were the legendary Yakshas. The ghost realm and the middle realm were two independent worlds. There was an impenetrable barrier between them that only great emperors could break through. But now, the Yakshas had appeared in the middle realm and were called fiends and sinful spirits. The Shura tribe was likely a unique being born from the Shura realm. The beings of the ghost realm and the Shura realm were called fiends and sinful spirits by the celestial tribute world. If he wasn't mistaken, the netherkin of the hell realm was likely the same kind of fiend as the celestial tribute world. Su Zimo mused, "What are sinful spirits?" It said that they're the descendants of some races that were bewitched by fiends and committed heinous crimes during the primordial era. Yulan said, "There are all kinds of races among the sinful spirits' descendants. There are even quite a few human cultivators. But remember, they're sinful spirits and no different from fiends. You don't have to show mercy when the time comes." Lin Xuanzhen, Wang Dong, and the others nodded. They seemed to have been to the fiend battlefield before and were no strangers to such matters. Su Zimo frowned slightly and remained silent. In that case, many of the fiends in the fiend battlefield should also be descendants of the Yakshas and the Shura race from the primordial era. But at the same time, another question arose in Su Zimo's mind. Since they're called sinful spirits, what heinous crimes did they commit back then? Su Zimo suddenly asked. Omnipotent Justice said, "Those sinful spirits were once bewitched by fiends and became enemies with all races, aiding the evildoer in his evil deeds. Their crimes were heinous." Su Zimo asked again, "But that's a matter of the primordial era. These sinful spirits are only their descendants. What do they have to do with the primordial era?" Yulan said, "Brother Su, you might not know this, but those fiends are savage by nature and are extremely hostile to us beings of the upper realm. No matter how many generations pass down, their nature will never change." Su Zimo had a deep understanding of this point. In the infernal world, when the beings of hell heard that he came from the upper realm, most of them would develop immense hostility and killing intent. What about the sinful spirits inside? Su Zimo asked. They were born in this era with countless generations between them. They have nothing to do with the mistakes of their ancestors in the primordial era. Why do they have to bear all this? Lu Yun, Yulan, and the others were stunned for a moment, stumped by the question. It was as if someone had committed a heinous crime and had already been punished. No matter how many generations or how many years had passed, their descendants would still be implicated. The moment they were born, their descendants were branded with the mark of sin and had to be punished, unable to turn over a new leaf for the rest of their lives. However, what did these descendants have to do with the heinous crimes of the past? After a moment, Yulan said hesitantly, "I think, the blood of sin also flows in the bodies of these sinful spirits' descendants." Although that was the case, Yulan's tone was somewhat uncertain. Lu Yun and the other peak masters fell into deep thought as well. Gong Sun Yu looked at Su Zimo and said with a smile, "Peak Master, you'll know when you enter the fiend battlefield. Inside, even if you're benevolent, those fiend sinful spirits won't let us off. Those fiend sinful spirits are each more vicious than the other. In the fiend battlefield, it's a fight to the death. There's no other choice." Chapter 2782. Oh right. Su Zimo recalled something else. "Brother Lu, you mentioned that exchanging for profound goldstone has something to do with the fiend battlefield. Why is that?" Lu Yun smiled and explained, "There are all sorts of peerless treasures in the Celestial Offering Pavilion, but you'll need contribution points to trade for them." "Battle credits?" Su Zimo murmured. "Battle merits are similar to merit points. You can think of them as a currency unique to the celestial tribute world. Battle merits are only useful here. There's only one way to earn battle credits, and that's to enter the fiend battlefield and slay the sinful spirits there. Most of the sinful spirits in the fiend battlefield are at the true spirit realm," Yulan chimed in. "Sun Zhen, Wang Dong, and the others killed sinful spirits there 1,000 years ago and earned some battle credits. However, they're still lacking a lot of battle credits to trade for treasures like profound goldstone." Realization dawned on Su Zimo. No wonder Lu Yun had said that one didn't need origin spirit stones or other rare treasures to trade for profound goldstone in the Sky Tribute world. Battle credits were the only form of currency in the Sky Tribute world. As the group conversed, the immortal boat arrived above Sky Tribute Island. Su Zimo looked back at the darkness in the distance with a slight frown. There was indeed something strange about the Sky Tribute world. Not only did it have some special rules, but it also had its own unique trading rules. From a certain perspective, the Sky Tribute world encouraged all races in the higher worlds to enter the Fiend battlefield and earn battle credits. Sinful spirits and sinful spirits were enemies of all races? Could it be related to the upheaval that swept through the 3,000 worlds? Su Zimo felt that there was a layer of fog behind the matter that prevented him from seeing the truth. Even Lu Yun and the others' explanations were vague and ambiguous. The group left the immortal boat and slowly landed on Sky Tribute Island. Even though the Sky Tribute Island had a restriction that stated that every living being could only stay in the Sky Tribute world for 10 days every 1,000 years, the Sky Tribute Island was still filled with people, and it was extraordinarily bustling. There were too many living beings in the 3,000 realms, but there was only one heavenly Venerate Island. Sweeping his gaze, Su Zimo could tell that there were at least 7 or 8 different races in the surroundings. Even though they were in human form, their auras were extremely different from that of humans. In the Celestial Tribute world, you can see life forms from various realms. The dozens over there are from the Golden Crow realm. Su Zimo followed Lu Yun's gaze and saw a group of Dongshu realm's sacred beasts. Their leader was tall and thin, with a pale golden complexion. His expression was cold, and his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. The so-called Golden Crow realm was the realm ruled by the 3-legged Golden Crows. The Golden Crow race was one of the primordial 9 races in Tianhuang mainland. The Golden Crow realm was one of the super realms in the upper realm. Su Zimo glanced around and saw a dozen or so cultivators with their heads held high and their chests puffed out were passing by not far away. Although these cultivators were in human form, Su Zimo's essence spirit contained the Dragon Phoenix essence spirit and was extremely sensitive to the aura of dragons. He immediately recognized that these cultivators were from the Dragon Realm. The immortal king leading the Dragon Realm seemed to sense something and looked in the direction of those from the Sword Realm. His gaze finally landed on Su Zimo and a trace of confusion flashed through the depths of his eyes. He shook his head and left with those from the Dragon Realm. Lu Yun, Yulan, and the others led thousands of sword cultivators in the direction of the Celestial Tribute Pavilion. Along the way, Su Zimo saw the Divine Phoenix and Divine Phoenix from the Wutong Realm, the golden-haired, blue-eyed Protoss from the Light Realm, and the tall barbarians from the Barbarian Realm. Su Zimo had encountered these beings on Tianhuang mainland before and was quite familiar with them. However, he'd never seen most of them before. Fortunately, Lu Yun introduced them to him along the way, which broadened his horizons. For example, the giant realm he'd encountered on the Dragon Abyss planet belonged to a higher realm. The 5 realms of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were all intermediate realms. On an isolated island, geniuses and true spirits from various realms gathered, as well as geniuses from 10,000 races. Even Lin Xuanzhen, Wang Dong, and the others didn't seem so outstanding after coming to Celestial Tribute Island. At this time, hundreds of women approached them from the side. Each of them exuded a faint fragrance and were charming in their own way. Any one of these women was an outstanding beauty with a celestial appearance. Everywhere they passed, they attracted waves of burning gazes. Even Gong Sunyu, Wang Dong, and the others stole a few glances in their direction. "Those are cultivators from the Flower Realm," Yulan said with a smile. "The Flower Realm is a higher realm and most of them are women. Their leader is Immortal King Yulan, a powerhouse in the Grotto Heaven Realm." Immortal King Yulan had an outstanding bearing, like an orchid in an empty valley. When she saw Lu Yun and the others, she cupped her hands and nodded with a smile as a greeting. Suddenly, Immortal King Yulan's beautiful eyes shifted to Su Zimo. The handsome man in blue robes looked young and was only a true immortal at the Celestial Realm, but he walked side by side with the other immortal kings. For some reason, Immortal King Yulan felt an inexplicable fondness for this young man she'd never met before. It was as if there was some special quality or aura on this person that made her involuntarily feel a sense of closeness. Love at first sight? The thought flashed through Immortal King Yulan's mind and she immediately sobered up. What's wrong with me? Why am I imagining things? Others didn't know the inside story, but they saw immortal King Yolan's beautiful eyes staring unblinkingly at Su Zimo. A faint blush even appeared on her cheeks, making her look even more charming and alluring. Lu Yun and the others were taken aback by this scene. Only Su Zimo had a rough idea of what was going on. Immortal King Yolan's true form should be an orchid, which was why she felt close to his Qinglian body. Taoist Yulan and brother Su know each other? Lu Yun coughed softly and asked tentatively. By now, immortal King Yulan had returned to normal and shook her head with a smile. No, how should I address you, young friend? This is Su Zhu, the Peak Lord of the 9th Sword Peak in the World of Swords. Oh. Immortal King Yulan was slightly surprised. No wonder he can walk side by side with Taoist Lu and the others. In that case, we should treat each other as equals. Pausing for a moment, she looked at Su Zimo and smiled. Taoist Su, if you have the chance to come to the flower world in the future, remember to come find me. I can take you on a tour around the world. This was a clear invitation. Bai Tianxing couldn't help but feel envious. Fairy Yulan, why didn't you invite us instead of Brother Su? We also want to take a look at the flower world. Immortal King Yulan smiled. Sure, you're all welcome to come along. What a good-for-nothing. Yulan rolled her eyes at him. Lu Yun also shook his head helplessly. How can you be like this? You're shameless enough to take the initiative without being invited. Those from the sword and flower worlds chuckled softly. The immortal kings chatted casually for a while longer before saying their goodbyes. Before leaving, immortal King Yulan gave Su Zimo a deep look before turning to leave with a trace of confusion. Chapter 2783. Sky Tribute Pavilion was located at the very center of Sky Tribute Island. It was also the tallest and largest building on the island, making it extremely conspicuous. As the group of Sword World made their way to Sky Tribute Pavilion, they encountered at least a few hundred beings from different realms. Most of the cultivators and living beings of the realms would show some respect when they saw the people of the Sword Realm. Even those from other major worlds would exchange a few polite pleasantries when they ran into Lu Yun and the others. However, Su Zimo's group was in the thousands, which naturally attracted a lot of discussion. Why are there so many people from Sword World? And a bunch of Earth and Empyrean immortals? Those people's attire is different from Sword World's. They look like they're from the 7-star Sword World. Oh right, I heard that the 7-star Sword World was destroyed a few days ago. Hundreds of millions of lives were slaughtered by the Sky Eye world. It's now in ruins. These people are probably the last survivors of the 7-star Sword World. They must have been taken in by Sword World. Quite a few cultivators guessed the gist of the situation after a few words. It didn't take long for the group to arrive at Sky Tribute Pavilion. Lu Yun explained, every true spirit can receive their own identity medallion in Sky Tribute Pavilion. Leave a consciousness mark on the front of the medallion and write down your name. The back of the medallion will display the number of battle merit points you've accumulated. A consciousness mark? Su Zimo murmured thoughtfully. He suddenly recalled that when he'd first arrived in Divine Firmament, he'd been forced to participate in a hunting competition hosted by Duke Yuanzhua. Back then, Duke Yuanzhua had distributed a medallion to everyone and told them to leave their consciousness marks on it. In fact, with this divine sense imprint, Commandery Prince Yuanzhua could monitor everyone and know the location and movements of every cultivator. Don't worry, Brother Su Zimo. This Sky Tribute medallion has been passed down through the ages and has never encountered any problems. Su Zimo smiled but didn't explain. In fact, even if there were any problems with the medallion, this kind of trick wouldn't be able to threaten him anymore. After cultivating the yin-yang talisman scripture, even the Academy Patriarch couldn't divine anything about him. With the help of the yin-yang charm scripture, Su Zimo could leave his spiritual sense imprint on it. However, as long as he willed it, even if it was millions of miles away, the divine sense on the token would be erased without a trace. The medallion is only useful in the celestial bestowment world. You should deposit it in the celestial bestowment pavilion before you leave. The contribution inside will also be preserved, so you can use it again next time you visit. After a pause, he continued, of course, if a living being dies in the outside world, it means that the medallion is now ownerless, and the battle merits on it will be erased. Wang Tong, Sun Zhen, go to the Sky Tribute Pavilion and get your tokens. Those who don't have tokens can also get them from the Sky Tribute Pavilion. Under the guidance of Lin Xuanzhen and Wang Dong, Su Zimo, Kitsune, Meng Hao, and a few other true immortals who did not have Sky Tribute medallions entered a large hall on the left side of Sky Tribute Pavilion. As soon as they entered the hall, Su Zimo felt his vision brighten. Tiny specks of light floated around him. When Lin Xuanzhen, Wang Dong, and the others extended their consciousnesses, a speck of light flew toward them. It was their Sky Tribute medallions. When Su Zimo extended his consciousness, a similar medallion flew toward him. It was made of a unique material that looked like jade, but wasn't. It looked like stone, but wasn't. Both sides were blank. Su Zimo imprinted Su Zhu on one side with his consciousness, and battle merits appeared on the other side. There was also a blank space behind the battle merits, with no indication of the number of battle merits. Kitsune, Meng Hao, and the others did the same. A short while later, the group exited the hall and returned to the entrance of Sky Tribute Pavilion. Looking at the thousands of Empyrean and Earth immortals gathered at the entrance, he mused, let's rent a residence. Although there's no danger in the Sky Tribute world, there are so many of us on this trip. It'll at least give us a place to settle down. Only true spirit realm cultivators or above could enter Sky Tribute Pavilion. The thousands of 7-star Sword World cultivators who just joined the Sword World didn't qualify. Yulan frowned. It'll cost 10 battle merits to rent a residence that can accommodate thousands of people for a day. 10 battle merits doesn't seem too high, does it? Su Zimo asked tentatively. Yulan shook his head. It's extremely difficult to earn battle merits in the Fiend battlefield. You should know that killing a Dongshu Realm evil spirit is only worth 10 points. Killing a Unity Realm evil spirit is only 1 point. Celestial Realm evil spirits are worth 3 points. Kongming Realm evil spirits are worth 6 points. Meng Hao clicked his tongue. Damn, renting a residence like this for a day is the equivalent of killing a Dongshu Realm evil spirit. Exactly, Yulan agreed. If we stay in the Sky Tribute world for 10 days, we'll be wasting 100 points. There are too many eyes in the Sky Tribute world, Feng Su said. Renting a residence will at least prevent beings from other realms from spying on us. We won't have to be secretive when communicating either. At this moment, Lin Xuanzhen suddenly opened his mouth and said faintly, Master, let's rent this house. I can naturally get back the 100 military exploits I have consumed. All right. Yulan relented when he heard Lin Xuanzhen's words. In next to no time, everyone from the Sword Dimension found an empty courtyard house near the Heaven Tribute Pavilion, and there was a groove in the shape of a command token on the entrance of the courtyard. Lin Xuanzhen stepped forward and placed his medallion in the groove. It fit perfectly. Immediately afterward, the house suddenly flashed with a burst of brilliance, and the door opened. Among the true immortals of the Sword World, Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others had less than 10 points in their medallions. Only Lin Xuanzhen had more than 100 points in his medallion, which allowed him to rent the residence. Su Zimo saw everything clearly. Originally, there was a powerful seal around the house that made it impossible for others to break in. Only the merit of the Heaven Bestowment Medallion could remove the seal. After settling the several thousand Empyrean and Earth immortals into the residence, he looked up at the sky. Time is of the essence, so let's not waste any more time. I think you should head to Sky Tribute Pavilion now and prepare to enter the Fiend battlefield. They only had 10 days to stay in Sky Tribute Pavilion. They hadn't earned a single point yet, but Lin Xuanjun had already spent 100 points. Alright. Gong Sun Yu, Wang Dong, and the others rubbed their palms together in anticipation. Lu Yun Yulan and Su Zimo, as well as Lin Xuanjun, Wang Dong, Meng Hao, and a dozen or so true immortals left the residence and returned to Sky Tribute Pavilion. Sky Tribute Pavilion can be roughly divided into 2 areas, Lu Yun said solemnly. Lu Yun said in a low voice, "There's a pagoda on the left with many rare treasures. The area on the right leads to the Fiend battlefield. Let's go to the treasure pagoda on the left first and see how many points the ore costs. That way we'll know how much it costs." The group entered Sky Tribute Pavilion and took a left turn to arrive at a towering pagoda, the treasure pagoda of Sky Tribute Pavilion. Chapter 2784. Su Zimo's eyes lit up the moment he entered the treasure pagoda. Countless rare treasures were laid out in a dazzling array. Pills, weapons, natural treasures, cultivation methods and secret arts, immortal herbs and plants, armor and protective gear, immortal gold ores, beast eggs, insect eggs, and more. Dead or alive, there was everything one could think of. The array of treasures was as vast as the stars in the sky, displayed on the first floor of the pagoda. It was Meng Hao's first time here and he couldn't help but gasp in amazement. Every treasure was placed in sealed chests of different sizes, each engraved with a different number. Next to each number was a groove the size of a Feng Tian medallion. The numbers correspond to the battle points needed to exchange for each treasure. If you want a treasure, place your medallion on it. If you have enough battle points, the chest will automatically open and take the treasure inside. Don't be fooled by the fact that there's no one guarding the pagoda. If anyone dares openly rob or steal anything inside, they'll be obliterated. Su Zimo took a casual look and saw a perfectly preserved Dao fruit that shone dimly in the treasure chest not far away. Normally speaking, most true spirits would cultivate Dao fruits in their bodies, but they'd be called by different names. However, it wasn't easy to obtain such a perfectly preserved Dao fruit. Every Dao fruit contained the profundities of the life's cultivation. If a cultivator could digest and absorb a Dao fruit, it would greatly improve their cultivation. There was a number marked on the chest, 10. 10 battle points. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. To think that it would only require 10 battle merits to preserve a perfect Dao fruit. Those from the sword world looked all the way down the pagoda's hall. Origin Celestial Crystal, 100 battle points. Violet Blood Ganoderma, 200 battle points. Blood Dissipation Needle, 250 battle points. As the group ventured deeper, the treasures around them required more and more battle points. Su Zimo soon spotted a familiar treasure. The Bodhi Seed. This treasure was placed in the arcane realm of Qingwei Heaven by immortal Emperor Chenmu. It was of great help to Su Zimo's cultivation. Even in the upper realm, it was an extremely rare and precious treasure. Exchanging for a Bodhi Seed required 500 battle merits. In the Evil Demon battlefield, killing a Unity Stage Evil Demon only gave 1 battle credit. Killing a Dongshu Stage Evil Spirit only gave him 10 battle merits. It was not easy to obtain 500 battle merits. It had already been an hour since they arrived here, and they were only halfway through the first floor of the treasure pagoda. The people from the sword world had yet to see the grand white profound gold rock. Lu Yun Yulan and the others frowned. If the grand white-black gold rock required too many battle merits, the pressure on Lin Xuanjun and the others would increase, and they might return empty-handed. Everyone walked forward until they were about to reach the end of the hall. Finally, they saw the grand white profound gold stone in a treasure chest. This piece of grand white-black gold rock was only the size of a fingernail, but it cost 1,000 battle merits. Yulan sighed softly, 8,000 battle merits. It's the most valuable treasure on the first floor of the treasure pagoda. When Su Zimo saw the troubled expression on Lu Yun, Yulan, and the others' faces, he realized that it would be more difficult and dangerous to enter the evil demon battlefield to obtain battle merits. 1,000 battle merits in 10 days meant that they would have to obtain 100 battle merits every day. If they wanted to kill Dongshu stage true spirits, they would have to kill 10 of them. Su Zimo had fought with the Yaksha tribe and the Shura tribe before, so he knew how terrifying they were. If he encountered them in the evil demon battlefield, it would be troublesome. Su Zimo pondered for a while, then said, "If we can't accumulate enough battle merits this time, can't we wait 1,000 years and come back to the celestial world and continue to obtain battle merits in the evil demon battlefield?" "Of course." Lu Yun said, "However, the grand white profound gold rock might have been exchanged by someone the next time you come. Also, if you accumulate 1,000 battle merits, it means that you've killed many evil demons. The powerful evil demons in the evil demon battlefield will definitely target you. When you enter the evil demon battlefield next time, the weak evil demons and sinful spirits will have long since gone into hiding. You'll easily be targeted by the powerful evil demons, so you won't have a chance to obtain many battle merits." Feng Su said, "As far as I know, the strongest true spirits in history can only accumulate 4,000 or 5,000 battle merits. It'll be very difficult to obtain more." Lin Xuanzhen said, 8,000 battle merits in 10 days is not impossible. Gong Sun Yu also said, "Peak Lords, don't worry. We have the Celestial Medallion. If we encounter danger, we can retreat at any time." This was another use of the Celestial Medallion. As long as one had the medallion with them, they could leave the evil demon battlefield and return to the celestial world. However, it would cost 10 battle merits each time. Sword Immortal Tai Lai also said, "That's right. Since we're already here, we should go to the evil demon battlefield and fight." In the sword world, they usually had their hands tied when sparring with fellow disciples. There were too many concerns. Now that they were in the celestial world, they didn't need to hold back when facing evil demons and sinful spirits. They could kill to their heart's content, so they naturally didn't want to return empty-handed. Lu Yun, Yu Lan, and the others looked at each other. After some hesitation, they nodded. Bai Tianxing said, "The evil demon battlefield is no friendly place. The evil demons and sinful spirits inside are vicious, and powerful. They're not to be underestimated. Among the evil demons and sinful spirits inside, there are even geniuses who've comprehended unparalleled combat arts. If you run into them, do not fight them. Retreat immediately." The evil demons and sinful spirits inside can comprehend unparalleled combat arts? Meng Hao jumped in fright. "Of course," Lu Yun said. "The strongest evil demons and sinful spirits inside are no weaker than the geniuses of the various worlds and races. Otherwise, they would have all been killed long ago. Many geniuses of the 3,000 worlds have died inside since ancient times, becoming food for the evil demons. Nominally, you're the ones going in to slay the evil demons and gain battle merits, but the evil demons and sinful spirits inside also want to kill you and take your cultivation resources." Yu Lan added, in addition to guarding against the evil demons and sinful spirits inside the evil demon battlefield, you also have to be wary of the true spirits of other worlds. There are no restrictions in the evil demon battlefield at all. Battles between the true spirits of various races often occur inside, so you must be careful. Feng Su said, "I just looked around and didn't see anyone from the Celestial Eye clan or the Stone clan. This is a good thing for us." "The Stone clan?" Su Zimo's expression changed. Seeing Su Zimo's confusion, Lu Yun explained, "The Stone clan is also a super major world, and its relationship with our Sword clan is like fire and water. The grudge between us has been like this for several epochs. The Stone clan's bloodline is ordinary, but their bodies are incredibly tough. Even divine weapons may not be able to harm them. They're easy to recognize. Most of them are tall and sturdy, and their skin is gray and rough, as if they're covered in a layer of stone. It's not just the evil demon battlefield. If you run into them anywhere else in the future, you must be careful." Su Zimo nodded and noted it down. Chapter 2785. What's up there? Su Zimo pointed above. The treasure pagoda towered into the clouds and clearly had more than one floor. They were only on the first floor of the treasure pagoda. Lu Yun said, all kinds of rare treasures are stored in the treasure pagoda. The same goes for the upper 4 floors. The treasures on the second floor of the treasure pagoda require at least 1,000 battle points. The upper limit is 2,000. The treasures on the third floor require between 2,000 and 3,000 battle points, and so on up to the 5th floor. As the floors continued to rise, the number of battle merits required for the treasures would also increase. What about after the 5th floor? Meng Hao couldn't help but ask. Yulan said, the treasures on the 5th floor require at least 5,000 battle points. But from what I know, they haven't been opened for a long time. Bai Tianxing interrupted, rumor has it that there are even more rare and precious treasures on the 10th floor. There are even forbidden manuals. Everyone from the sword world gasped. Lu Yun shook his head slightly. Those are just rumors. Even if they are true, the amount of battle points required is unimaginable. It's impossible to achieve by killing in the fiend battlefield. That was indeed the case. The number of true spirits that could enter the fiend battlefield from each realm was limited to 10. The number of fiends in the fiend battlefield was hard to estimate. If they stayed in the fiend battlefield for too long, they would definitely be targeted and fall into a dangerous situation. Not to mention obtaining battle points, it was already extremely fortunate to be able to escape in time. The group walked around the first floor of the treasure pagoda before leaving. They needed to obtain 1,000 battle points, which was extremely difficult for Lin Xuanzhen and the others. Time was precious, so there was no need for them to stay in the treasure pagoda for too long. After leaving the treasure pagoda, the group didn't stop and headed toward the fiend battlefield. On the way, Lin Xuanzhen suddenly said, I'll distribute the battle points in the honor medallion to all of you. Lu Yun nodded. Everyone gets 10 points of merit. That way, we'll be able to leave as soon as possible if we run into any danger. Not only did the Heaven Bestowment Token record battle merits, but it was also equivalent to a teleportation method, allowing one to leave the demonic battlefield at any time. However, every time he used the Heaven Bestowment Token to teleport back from the demonic battlefield, he had to spend 10 battle merits. Although Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others had also been to the Celestial Tribute Realm, they had less than 10 battle merits on their tokens. As for Su Zimo and Kitsun's Heavenly Bestowment Medallions, they didn't have a single contribution. Wang Tong and the others took out their Skybound Medallions, and Lin Xuanzhen gently touched his medallion with theirs. In the blink of an eye, the battle merits on Wang Tong's Feng Tian token had increased to 10 points. Upon seeing this, Su Zimo suddenly frowned as if he had thought of something. Noticing that something was off with Su Zimo, he said, I'm sure you've already guessed it, Brother Su. Su Zimo nodded gently. If the battle merits on the Heaven Bestowment Medallion can be transferred at will, it means that there's a high chance that the true spirits of the various worlds will fight for battle merits in the fiend battlefield. Exactly, Lu Yun said. Lu Yun continued. Therefore, in addition to guarding against the evil spirits, you also need to be wary of the experts from other worlds. Feng Su said, true spirits of the various worlds often kill each other in the demonic battlefield. However, ordinary true spirits don't dare provoke our sword world. Bai Tianxing added, Lin Xuanzhen and the others form the great formation of myriad swords. They'll be able to put up a fight even against a true spirit. The entrance to the demonic battlefield was in an enormous open-air plaza in the Celestial Tribute Pavilion. It didn't take long for those from the sword world to arrive at the Celestial Tribute Plaza. 10 enormous screens of water had been erected around the plaza, clearly displaying the terrain, environment, and everything in the other world. The demonic battlefield can be roughly divided into 10 areas, Lu Yun said. These 10 screens present the complete battlefield. Focus on one of the screens and send your consciousness into it. You'll be able to see what's going on inside. Releasing his spirit consciousness, Su Zimo made contact with one of the gigantic screens. Just as he'd expected, he seemed to have entered the demonic battlefield. At first, he was still in the sky, but as he drew closer, everything in front of him seemed to be magnified. He could even clearly see the patterns on a fallen leaf. It was a marvelous feeling. Su Zimo withdrew his consciousness and everything returned to normal. Tens of thousands of beings from various worlds had gathered in the Celestial Tribute Plaza. There was a large-scale transportation formation beneath each of the screens. 10 cultivators from the soaring celestial realms stepped onto a transportation formation and disappeared from the Celestial Tribute Plaza in a flash of light. As expected, they'd entered the demonic battlefield. There are 10 portals to the demonic battlefield, and you'll land at random. Therefore, the first thing you should do after entering the battlefield is to observe your surroundings and be on high alert. If they were unlucky and landed in a gathering place of demons or encountered a true spirit, they'd have no choice but to withdraw early. Su Zimo's eyes darted around and saw a jade stele erected in the center of the plaza, listing the cultivators' names. That's the jade stele of battle merits. It's ranked according to the amount of battle merits a true spirit has. There are 100 of them. Those able to leave their names on it are virtually all supreme true spirits. Lu Yun said, "It's no exaggeration to say that these 100 are the strongest true spirits in the 3,000 worlds. In the world of celestials, there were such things as true immortals and true demons. But in the upper world, only those who'd comprehended the ultimate combat arts had the right to be called true spirits. There were countless beings in the 3,000 worlds who'd cultivated to the true first realm, but there were only 100 who could be called true spirits. Including those who'd comprehended the ultimate combat arts but hadn't left their names on the stele, there were less than 200 of them." Su Zimo's gaze landed on the first row of the stele. Xia Yin, Celestial Eye World. This living being from the Heavenly Eye clan called Xia Yin was ranked first on the battle merit jade stele. Yulan said, "This is the one born with the yin-yang eye. He's extremely infamous among the true spirits of the 3,000 worlds. Although the ranking on the stele doesn't necessarily represent battle strength, it doesn't differ by much." Su Zimo took a quick glance. Among the 100 spots on the battle merit jade stele, there were paragons from the Dragon World, Stone World, Great Wilderness World, Wudong World, Tomb World, Radiant World, Witch World, Blood World and Golden Crow World. Most of them were from the super major worlds. There were 2 in the Celestial Eye World alone. However, he didn't see any familiar faces on the stele. Chess Goddess Junyu belonged to the world of celestials and had comprehended the ultimate combat arts. She could be considered a true spirit, but her name wasn't on the stele. He didn't know if she hadn't come to the Celestial Eye World yet, or if she didn't have enough battle merit points. Chapter 2786. Do you have any other questions? He looked at Lin Xuanzhen, Su Zimo, and the others. His words were mainly directed at Su Zimo and Kitsune. After all, it was their first time in the celestial bestowment world. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before asking, "Are there any other ways to teleport back from the celestial bestowment medallion?" After all, using the medallion to teleport required a lot of merit points. The merit points on their medallions had come from Lin Xuanzhen, so it would be best if they could save them. Yes. Lu Yun nodded. There are 10 spatial nodes in the Fiend battlefield that can be used to teleport people out at any time. However, the locations of these nodes change frequently. Unless you're extremely lucky, it'll be very difficult to find them in 10 days. Yulan continued, "Brother Su, there's no need for you and Kitsune to take the risk with Sun Zhen and the others. With Sun Zhen leading the team this time, the 8 of them will be more than enough. It won't be too late to enter the Fiend battlefield after you and Kitsune reach the Dongshu realm." Yulan's true intention was for Su Zimo and Kitsune to follow them in, while Lin Xuanzhen and the others would have to expend some effort to protect them. Not only would the 2 of them be unnecessary, they might even drag down Lin Xuanzhen and the others. However, Yulan spoke rather tactfully and didn't make the matter clear. Feng Su and Bai Tianxing looked at each other, understanding the meaning behind Yulan's words. Feng Su also smiled. "That's right. Brother Su, if you're interested, you can take a look at the 10 giant screens in Celestial Bestowment Square. You'll gain a rough understanding of the Fiend battlefield and accumulate experience." Su Zimo pondered for a moment. Let's go in and take a look. It won't be too late for me to back out if anything happens. In reality, Su Zimo was not interested in killing the so-called evil fiends and sinful spirits for battle merits. However, Lin Xuanzhen and the others had taken a huge risk to come here and fight in the fiendish demon battlefield in order to obtain the grand white mysterious gold Oregon. As for the grand white profound gold stone, it was the ultimate treasure of the Burial Sword Peak. As the peak master of Burial Sword Peak, he couldn't stay out of this matter. When Yu Lan and the others heard Su Zimo's words, they couldn't persuade him any further. Lu Yun waved a hand. There's no harm in Brother Su coming with us. He paused for a moment, then looked at Lin Xuanzhen and the others with a serious expression. However, Wang Dong, Sun Jin, the 8 of you must take good care of Brothers Su and Kitsune and ensure their safety. Wang Dong said in a deep voice, Master, don't worry. When we enter the evil demon battlefield, we will form the myriad sword formation and protect Peak Master Su and junior sister Baiming in the middle. When she heard this, Kitsune turned to look at Su Zimo with a strange expression. Su Zimo hadn't used his full strength in the sword world. Although everyone knew that he'd comprehended Altus, his cultivation was limited. Even if he'd comprehended a peerless combat art, how much of its power could he bring to bear? No one knew his true strength, not even Kitsune. However, Kitsune was certain of one thing, and that was that Su Zimo didn't need anyone's protection. Su Zimo remained calm and didn't say anything. Gong Sun Yu said, Don't worry, Peak Masters. After all, we have the Feng Tian medallion. Even if we run into danger, we'll be able to escape unscathed. Lu Yun said in a low voice, Even with the medallion, we can't be careless. Who knows how many geniuses from various worlds have been buried in the fiendish demon battlefield? Bai Tianxing nodded. Some geniuses are arrogant and think that their battle prowess is unparalleled. They seek out powerful fiends to fight them, and by the time they want to leave the battlefield, they won't have the chance to use the medallion. There are also true spirits who are instantly killed by the fiends and sinful spirits inside. They don't have time to use the medallion at all, Yu Lan added. The medallion is only a way out for you. It can't completely guarantee your safety. Don't be careless. If you run into any danger inside, or the 10 great fiends, don't linger. Use the medallion to teleport back at once. Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others all nodded in agreement. In truth, they were already getting impatient. They were the strongest of their respective peaks, and this wasn't their first time entering the fiendish demon battlefield. They were brimming with confidence and couldn't wait to enter the battlefield and fight to their heart's content. The 10 great fiends? Su Zimo's expression changed. There are a great number of fiends and sinful spirits in the fiendish demon battlefield. Some powerful fiends have been born there, all of them at the level of true spirits. After countless battles, the true spirits of all races selected the strongest 10 from the fiendish demon battlefield. They are the 10 great fiends. Meng Hao clicked his tongue. That's amazing. Most of the geniuses from the various major worlds have died at the hands of the 10 great fiends, Lu Yun said. Even the true spirits on the battle merit Jade Steels have a hard time winning against the 10 great fiends. It's precisely because of the 10 great fiends that the true spirits of all races can't rake in battle merits as they please, Yu Lan said. For example, the supreme true spirit on the war merit Jade Steel. Once it enters the fiend battlefield, it will definitely be targeted by one of the 10 great fiends. Gong Sun Yu smiled. The 10 of us didn't leave our names on the steels, so we shouldn't attract the attention of the 10 great fiends. Lu Yun nodded. No matter what, you should still be careful in the fiendish demon battlefield. If you run into danger, we won't be able to help you even if we can see it. Before you enter the battlefield, hang your bestowment medallions on your waists and show them to the outside world. They're also a reflection of your identity. Apart from a few demons with special appearances that can be recognized at a glance, there are also many sinful spirits that look no different from the other races. You can determine whether they're sinful spirits or true spirits of the 3,000 worlds by relying on the medallions. Under the repeated instructions of the 4 Peak Lords, Su Zimo, Lin Xuanzhen, and the others stepped into a transportation formation under one of the giant curtains and disappeared from the Sky Tribute Plaza. Lu Yun's expression darkened as he looked in the direction Su Zimo and the others had disappeared. Because they just fought the Celestial Eye clan before arriving in the Sky Tribute world, and the Cold Eye King had even threatened them, he'd been worried all along. In truth, the true spirits of the Sword world in this life might be able to contend with the Celestial Eye world. However, Lin Xuanjun, Su Zimo, and Yun Ting weren't at their peak yet. They still needed time. As long as the three of them grew up, they definitely have the right to leave their names on the Jade Steels. Don't worry. Yulan saw the worry in Lu Yun's heart and comforted him. Brothers Su and Kitsune aren't strong enough, but with Lin Xuanjun, Wang Dong and the others, their myriad sword formation is almost flawless. If Lin Xuanjun can use this opportunity to comprehend the true essence of Altus and become a true spirit, it'll be easy for him to earn 1,000 battle credits, Feng Su said. I hope so. Yulan also looked forward to it. The four Peak Lords' consciousness probed the 10 giant curtains and quickly found Su Zimo, Lin Xuanjun, and the others. Over there. Lu Yun pointed at one of the curtains. Zone 3 of the Fiend Battlefield. Chapter 2787. Accompanied by a slight dizziness, Su Zimo's group left Sky Tribute Square and arrived in a completely different space. Lin Xuanjun, Wang Dong, and the others had just arrived. They immediately spread out their divine senses and formed the myriad sword formation, protecting Su Zimo and Kitsune in the middle. They were on high alert and carefully probing their surroundings. The 10 of them were in a valley surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and the exit of the valley on the other side. They could see a dark and deep forest. The surroundings were quiet and even a little gloomy. Even the air was slightly moist and emitted a faint smell of blood. The Fiend Battlefield. Everyone looked around and heaved a sigh of relief when they did not discover any danger. Their tense minds gradually relaxed. Let's go that way. Lin Xuanjun pointed in the direction of the exit of the valley and said in a deep voice. Although Su Zimo had the highest status among the 10 of them, in the eyes of everyone, Lin Xuanjun was the #1 perfected immortal of Sword World and should be the leader of this group. No one had any objections to her decision. Lin Xuanjun, Wang Dong, and the others did not move quickly and maintain the myriad sword formation. Lin Xuanjun was at the front and was equivalent to the tip of an immortal sword. If anything happened, Lin Xuanjun would be the first to attack. Half an hour later, the group walked out of the valley and did not encounter any danger throughout the entire process. Peak Master, Junior Sister Baiming, don't think it's too slow. Wang Dong explained, in the Fiend Battlefield, it's best to move on the ground. Although it's slower, it's relatively safe and won't attract too much attention. Of course, it's a different story if there are some powerful and fearless supreme true spirits. Su Zimo nodded. With everyone's means, if they wanted to leave the valley, they only needed to fly in the air and it would only take a few dozen breaths. However, if they flew in the air, it would be easier to expose their whereabouts and attract the attacks of large numbers of fiend sinful spirits. The exit of the valley was still some distance away from the forest in the north. There was a vast plain in the middle where some grass that was half a person's height grew. Su Zimo's expression changed and he suddenly said, "Someone's coming." Who's it? Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others were stunned for a second. They kept their eyes on the 6 directions and ears on the 8 directions from beginning to end. They spread out their divine senses, yet they didn't notice anything unusual, nor did they notice anyone approaching. They were all true immortals of the Dongshu stage, but they didn't sense the danger. Could it be that Su Zimo had sensed it first? That person is fast. Su Zimo frowned slightly and said again, "We are surrounded." Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others were still oblivious. Li Shui, Xin Yu, and the others looked at each other and curled their lips slightly. Although they did not say anything, they did not agree in their hearts. It was true that Su Zimo was the peak master of the 9th Sword Peak, so they did not dare to talk about it in public. However, in their hearts, they were more or less dissatisfied with Su Zimo. He was only a true immortal of the heavenly human stage, but he had ascended to the position of peak master. His status was above theirs. They were all true immortals of the Dongshu stage, the top cultivators of their respective sword peaks. Naturally, they felt a little uncomfortable. Now, Su Zimo's warning seemed more like an overreaction to it. He was too nervous, so he was startled. Gong Sun Yu coughed softly and said, "Peak Master Su, you might be too nervous. Don't worry, as long as you and junior sister Baiming follow us closely, you won't. Everyone be careful. There's danger." Before Gong Sun Yu could finish, Lin Xuanjun suddenly opened his mouth and said quickly, "Buzz." Before he finished speaking, the immortal sword on Lin Xuanjun's back had already been unsheathed and landed in his palm, emitting a sword light. It was only now that everyone realized that danger was indeed approaching. Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others drew their immortal swords and waited with rapt attention. At this moment, Wang Tong and the others finally sensed the danger. The other party was coming menacingly from all directions. They had already formed an encirclement, and their speed was shocking. When Wang Tong and the others first sensed the other party, they were still 100 miles away. In the blink of an eye, they were already within 10 miles. What a fast movement technique! Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others were shocked. In the sword world, other than killing techniques, they were most proficient in movement techniques. But now, the other party's movement technique was clearly faster than everyone else's. This kind of movement technique speed was so fast that it could even escape the detection and envelopment of divine senses. Not only that, everyone could not see the figure of the other party at all. They could only judge by the swaying of the surrounding grass. The surrounding grass seemed to have been hit by a huge impact, breaking and collapsing one after another. No one knew what kind of terrifying living being was hiding in the grass. Gullies appeared one after another, and they were rapidly approaching the people of the sword world. Wang Tong and Gong Sun Yu were nervous, and their palms were sweating. No one had expected to encounter such a crisis the moment they arrived in the fiend battlefield. Lin Xuanjun's expression was calm. He closed his eyes and tried his best to sense the surrounding movements. All of a sudden, Lin Xuanjun opened her eyes and hollered, "Attack!" With her in the lead, Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others drew their swords and channeled their Dao fruits. Instantly, the thousand sword formation was activated, releasing streaks of terrifying sword chi in all directions. The 8 of them had known each other for many years and had great teamwork. Although they had yet to see their opponents, everyone chose to believe in Lin Xuanjun's judgment after hearing her voice and activated the thousand sword formation right away. Pissed, pissed, pissed. The thousand sword formation was activated like a gigantic spiral, slicing through the dense grass in the surroundings and creating large empty areas. Clink, clink, clink. The sound of metal clashing could be heard from the grass. When the grass was destroyed, the other party knew that they could no longer hide their tracks, so they all rose into the air and finally revealed themselves. When they saw the other party, the pupils of Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others constricted slightly. As for Su Zimo and Kitsune, a look of shock flashed through their eyes. Most of the living beings were tall and ugly. They had green faces and fangs while their skin was dark. All of them stood in the air with 2 pairs of gigantic flesh wings on their backs. At the end of their flesh wings, there were sharp nails on their fingers and toes that shone with a cold glint. Wielding a gigantic curved saber in each of their hands, they looked like malevolent ghosts from hell. There were a few living beings that were similar to humans in terms of appearance. Although they had 2 pairs of flesh wings on their backs as well, Their figures were slender and their faces were beautiful. They were rather alluring. Rakshasa race? When Su Zimo saw them, he recognized the background of the living beings right away. The Rakshasa race was one of the primordial 9 races of Tianhuang mainland. The men of the Rakshasa race were frighteningly ugly with black bodies and red hair. They had green faces and fangs that were frighteningly menacing. However, the women were slender and beautiful, similar to humans. Of course, there were slight differences between the Rakshasa race before them and those of Tianhuang mainland. The Rakshasa race of Tianhuang mainland only had a single pair of flesh wings. However, the living beings before them all had 2 pairs of wings and looked even stronger. Chapter 2788. It was no wonder why the other party's movement technique was so fast. Even in Tianhuang mainland, the Rakshasa race that only had a pair of wings was one of the fastest among the 10,000 races. There were more than 100 Rakshasas and all of them were at the true spirit realm. Among them, there were more than 80 paradise void true spirits while the rest were at the consolidation, heavenly being and Kongming realms. This is a little tricky. Sword Immortal Tai Lai sent a voice transmission with a grim expression. Gong Sun Yu said softly, "If it's just this group of Rakshasa ghosts, we might be able to fight them. However, their movement techniques are way too fast. It's easy to injure them but difficult to kill them." The situation before them was even more troublesome than when they faced the hundreds of perfected immortals of the Heavenly Eye race back in the 7-star sword world. Back then, although the Heavenly Eye race had hundreds of true spirits, there were not many Paradise Void true spirits. But now, the Rakshasa race had hundreds of Paradise Void true spirits. Most importantly, the Rakshasa race was best at speed. They came and went without a trace, traveling thousands of miles in an instant. As Gong Sun Yu said, even if they could severely injure some of the Rakshasa ghosts with the help of the sword formation was activated and they would be able to escape the battlefield as long as they gave them a chance to catch their impenetrable sword net. There was no way they would chase after the injured Rakshasa race around the sword net continuously. The moment someone chased after the injured Rakshasa race beings, they collided with the sword formations net and would disperse and they would be at a disadvantage. The movement techniques of the Rakshasa race were way too fast. The Rakshasa race was the last thing the true spirits of the 3,000 worlds and the others would encounter in the fiend battlefield. They could not even if they encountered the Rakshasa race. They could only rely on the true spirit formation to keep the 100 Rakshasas at bay. That was because even if they could win against the Rakshasa true spirits, they might not have the weakest cultivation realms. Instead, they glared at the two of them and attacked repeatedly. Furthermore, There were more than 100 Rakshasas right now. Formed by Lin Xuanzhen's group of 8 was fully activated with almost no flaws, when he heard Gong Sun use term for the Rakshasa race. Immediately, he seemed to have thought of something and fell into retreated and fought at the same time. Most of the primordial 9 although they could not kill the Rakshasas, mainland reigned supreme could in the upper break world. Through the defense of the Thousand Sword some of them were even super worlds. Kitsune followed for example behind the Protoss of the light world. Feeling confused, she could not help but ask through voice transmission. The barbarian race of the barbarian world and the three-legged golden crow of the golden crow world. It's clear that they want to kill us all. These races either had powerful bloodlines, retreating into the forest, physical bodies, or some kind of terrifying innate talent. Is dark and deep with ancient trees that reached the Rakshasa race would actually appear and restrict the movement techniques of the Rakshasas. This meant that the Rakshasa clan was understood as a type of devil reminded by Su Zimo. Maintain the Rakshasa's movement and retreat could only unleash its greatest power in a wide open space. Voice rang although the ancient trees in the forest could not defend against the sharp fleshy wings of the Rakshasas, they would definitely affect their movement techniques to a certain extent. And the others followed closely behind. This effect was extremely fatal. The formation of the 8 people seemed to have condensed into an immortal sword as they headed towards the dense forest. Group of 8 relied on the Thousand Sword formation that there was nothing to gain from fighting with this group of Rakshasas. Zimo and Kitsune were at the center of the sword formation and were unharmed as well. They might not be able to obtain some of the Rakshasas with lower cultivation realms were injured by Lin Xuanzhen's immortal swords. However, although they were not killed and managed to escape from the battlefield in time, many Rakshasas around them did not agree and the killing intent in their eyes intensified. Accompanied by a sharp howl, as the 10 of them from the sword world were about to enter the forest, flapped the gigantic wings on their backs. Woman shrieked. Wielding dual sabers, they turned into streaks of visible halos and charged forth from the glabella of the Rakshasa woman, shrouding Lin Xuanzhen's group of 10. Time stop, the supreme divine power? Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu and the others were calm and indifferent. A single supreme divine power could not affect the Thousand Sword formation at all. Su Zimo was the only one who furrowed his brows slightly and noticed something amiss. That divine power was indeed time stop. However, the divine power that the Rakshasa woman had comprehended had already touched upon a trace of the power of space-time imprisonment. As for space-time imprisonment, it was a supreme divine ability. Watch out. Right then, Lin Xuanzhen noticed something amiss and warned hurriedly. Initially, the Thousand Sword formation was operating normally. However, after the Rakshasa woman released time stop, the Thousand Sword formation paused for a moment. That pause did not affect Lin Xuanzhen, Wang Dong and the others much. However, it revealed a flaw in the Thousand Sword formation. Everyone merely felt a flash before their eyes as a ghostly figure flashed by. Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu and the others instinctively waved their swords to block, but all their immortal swords missed. Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu and the others seemed to have thought of something as their expressions changed starkly. That flaw was not much of a threat to them. However, Su Zimo and Kitsune, who were at the center of the formation, were exposed to the Rakshasa race instantly. That flaw was enough to claim the lives of Su Zimo and Kitsune. Chapter 2789. Among the 100-odd Rakshasa true spirits, this Rakshasa woman had the strongest combat strength. She was also their commander and was in control of the entire situation. She had released the time-stop peerless divine ability. Although it had exposed a flaw in the myriad sword array, through the exchange of blows just now, she could clearly tell that the 8 people who formed the sword array were not weak. It was unrealistic for her to make use of this flaw to kill one of the 8 of them. Furthermore, the combat strength of the only woman who held a sword among the 8 of them was so strong that she even felt a huge threat. She only had a chance for a moment. After this moment, the sword-wielding woman would react. A moment was definitely not enough to deal with a Paradise Void Realm true spirit. However, killing a true spirit at consolidation or heavenly being true spirit would be a piece of cake for her. She locked her target on the man and woman in the middle of the sword formation. It was not a spur-of-the-moment decision, but the result of careful consideration and planning. How could it be that easy to make use of the terrain advantage of the dense forest to defend against the Rakshasa race? Before entering the dense forest, I'll let you leave 2 corpses behind. In a flash, she wielded her dual sabers and turned into a streak of black light, arriving before the man and woman in the middle of the sword formation. The man and woman seemed to be scared out of their wits and were still standing motionlessly on the spot without reacting. The man had a delicate face and clear eyes as he looked up at her. Their gazes met and a strange feeling arose in her heart. This person doesn't seem that despicable. Should I spare his life? The moment that thought flashed through her mind, she killed it. Since I've chosen to enter this place, it must be to hunt them down and obtain battle merits. No one is innocent, including this person. At that thought, she no longer hesitated and the two sabers in her hands flashed, slicing towards the heads of the man and woman. Just one slash was enough to cut their heads in half. Even their Dao fruits could not block her scimitar. All of a sudden, the green-robed man opposite her raised his hand. The green-robed man's movements were not big and he did not put on any airs. He merely extended his finger and knocked on her sabers. When she saw the green-robed man extend his finger, she did not take it to heart at all. Even if the green-robed man summoned his spirit treasure, he would not be able to block the sharpness of her sabers, let alone a single finger. The difference in strength between the two of them was too great. However, the moment the green-robed man's finger tapped on the blade, her body trembled slightly. Her expression changed greatly as disbelief filled her eyes. That jade-like finger was like a stone pillar that reached the heavens. It heavily collided with her scimitar, bursting forth with shocking divine power. At that moment, she almost lost her grip on the scimitar in her hand. The webbing between her thumb and index finger was instantly torn apart, and blood was gushing out. She was greatly shocked. Right at this moment, a wisp of blazing and piercingly cold sword light appeared before his eyes, and it instantly arrived before him with ghastly killing intent. The sword-wielding woman had made her move. Under normal circumstances, this sword could not hurt her at all. However, her saber momentum was blocked by the green-robed man's finger, causing her to stop. Most importantly, the scene just now had a huge impact on her heart. Her reaction had also slowed down by a bit. She abruptly turned her body sideways and flapped her wings with all her might. She fled in an attempt to avoid the sword light. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. Pucci, one of her arms, along with the two wings on the side, was severed by the sword. Blood gushed out like a fountain and sprayed into the air. Even though she was severely injured, she relied on the innate divine powers of the Rakshasa race to conjure two blood-colored wings with her bloodline. Maintaining her balance, she transformed into a streak of blood light and fled the battlefield. What a pity! When they saw that, Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu and the others lamented internally. The Rakshasa race was way too fast. Even if they were severely injured, they might not have the chance to kill her. Of course, given Lin Xuanzhen's combat strength, there was a high chance that he could kill her if he continued chasing after her. However, the moment Lin Xuanzhen left, the thousand-sword formation would not be able to form. Wang Dong and Gong Sun Yu were not in any danger. They could protect themselves given their capabilities. However, that would be equivalent to exposing Su Zimo and Kitsune to danger. The exchange between Su Zimo and the Rakshasa woman happened in a flash. Furthermore, Su Zimo's movements were so subtle that Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu and the others did not notice. All of them thought that it was Lin Xuanzhen's timely intervention that saved Su Zimo and Kitsune. Lin Xuanzhen was the only one who frowned slightly, feeling that something was amiss. Under normal circumstances, her sword should not have been able to hit the Rakshasa woman. However, the Rakshasa woman's body froze strangely after she attacked. That was why she was severely injured by her sword. Since the battle was still ongoing, Lin Xuanzhen did not think too much about it and covered the group as they charged into the forest. When the Rakshasa race saw that their leader was severely injured, they were completely enraged and had no intention of letting Lin Xuanzhen and the others off. They wanted to charge into the forest and continue their pursuit. Stop chasing! Suddenly, the female leader of the Rakshasa race shouted softly. When the 100-odd Rakshasas heard that, they did not dare to disobey and lingered outside the forest for a while before returning to the female leader's side. Leader! One of the Rakshasa race beings said hatefully, "Are we going to let them off just like that? As long as we continue our pursuit and wear them down slowly, they won't be able to last much longer." The sword formation of that group of sword cultivators is indeed a little troublesome. However, the couple in the formation is their weakness. As long as we keep an eye on them, we'll have a chance to break the formation and kill them one by one. That's right. Among that group of sword cultivators, only that woman is a little troublesome. The rest are nothing to be afraid of. The Rakshasa race beings spoke one after another, but the female leader did not say anything the entire time. Weakness. A moment later, she scoffed coldly and handed the two curved sabers in her hands to everyone. The Rakshasas focused their gazes and their expressions changed. The two curved sabers were filled with cracks and were completely useless. How did this happen? One of the Rakshasa race beings asked cautiously, "Leader, your weapon seems to be an 8 tribulation spirit treasure, right?" The female leader replied coldly, "The weakness that you guys mentioned earlier on shattered my destiny spirit treasure with a single finger." Pissed, the Rakshasas sucked in cold breaths. What sort of power was that to be able to shatter an 8 tribulation spirit treasure with a single finger? Among that group of people, that woman is only a little troublesome. However, the green-robed man in the sword formation is the true hidden expert. The Rakshasa leader said coldly, "Are you guys sending yourselves to your deaths if you continue your pursuit?" One of the Rakshasa race beings asked softly, "Leader, since that green-robed man is so strong, should we inform the commander and get him to eliminate him?" The female leader remained silent for a moment before shaking her head. "There's no need for that yet. However, go back and inform your clansmen to avoid that group of sword cultivators for the time being. Don't fight with them and wait and see." Understood. The Rakshasas scattered one after another, turning into streaks of dark light that vanished into the horizon. The female leader of the Rakshasa race looked in the direction of the forest with a hint of confusion in her eyes. Logically speaking, given the green-robed man's capabilities, he should have been able to kill her. However, why did he spare her life and allow her to leave? Chapter 2790. In the forest. Everyone from the sword world sped for a while and heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that there were no Rakshasas chasing after them. They consumed some elixirs and rested on the spot. Indeed. Gong Sun Yu chuckled. The Rakshasas are wary of the forest and their movement techniques are restricted. That's why they did not dare to continue chasing after us and could only give up. If they had entered the forest, the Rakshasas would definitely have left a few corpses behind. Li Shui said coldly. When Wang Dong saw that Su Zimo and Kitsune were fine, he patted his chest and said with lingering fear, "I was scared to death earlier on. Thankfully, the Peak Master and Junior Sister Baiming are fine. Otherwise, we would have committed unforgivable sins." Sword Immortal Tai Lai added, "Thankfully, Senior Sister Lin intervened in time and severely injured that female Rakshasa ghost. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable." Su Zimo did not explain further and turned to Lin Xuanzhen, cupping his fists. "Thank you for saving us, fellow Taoist Lin." Although he was the Peak Master of Ninth Sword Peak, He never put on airs in front of cultivators of the same cultivation realm like Lin Xuanzhen and Wang Dong. Most of the time he addressed them as fellow Taoists. Lin Xuanzhen nodded and did not say anything. However, she still felt that something was amiss and looked at Su Zimo deeply. Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu and the others chatted while resting. Just this
Exchanging
point
their
alone was a
insights
great
from
merit.
the earlier battle.
When he thought of Yu
Lin
Luosha,
Xuanzhen rolled
Su
her eyes
Zimo
at
didn't
Su
kill
Zimo
her and asked
when
in
the
a seemingly
female
casual
Rakshasa
manner.
clan commander
Peak
fled
Master
after
Su's
being
senses
severely
are sharp.
injured by Lin
You
Xuanzhen.
discovered the
He didn't stop
Rakshasas
her
a
either.
long time ago.
Master,
Are
in
you
reality,
thinking of Yu
Lin
Luosha?
Xuanzhen had noticed
Suddenly,
Su
Kitsun's
Zimo a
voice
long time
sounded
ago.
in Su Zimo's
When she
mind.
first heard that Su
Kitsune was
Zimo
the
had become
only
the
one
peak
who could
master
roughly
of
guess
Ninth
Su
Sword
Zimo's
Peak.
thoughts.
She was indignant.
Su Zimo
However,
nodded.
when she
To
headed
think
to
that the
Ninth
Rakshasa
Sword Peak
race
and
could be
comprehended
reduced
the
to
Tao of
evil
Sword
fiends
Burial,
and
she
sinful
realized
spirits
how
in the upper
terrifying
world.
it was.
Now that
Someone
Yu
who could
Luosha
create
has
a sword
ascended to the
Tao
upper
as such
world,
was
it's
definitely
probably
extraordinary.
even harder for her to
However,
survive.
Su
In
Zimo was
fact,
in
she might
seclusion
even
all
be
year
in the evil
round
demon
and lived in
battlefield.
seclusion.
At that
As
thought,
such, the
Su
two of them
Zimo
did not
suddenly
have much
regretted
chance
it.
to interact.
If he had known,
Among
he would have
cultivators
captured
of the same
Rakshasa
level
and
the
questioned
only
him in
one that
detail.
Lin Xuanzhen
Before
couldn't see
long,
through was
everyone
Su Zimo.
recovered more or
What she
less
said just
and
now
got up
was
to
also a
continue on
test.
their journey.
She was
The
a little
forest
confused.
was dark and deep
Su
with countless
Zimo was
towering
only at the
ancient
celestial
trees,
being stage.
blocking one's vision.
How could he
and
find
even
the
the range of
Rakshasa
one's
ghost
spirit
earlier than
consciousness
her?
was greatly
Wang
hindered.
Tong,
The
Gong
forest
Sun
was
Yu,
silent
and
the
the
entire
others
way,
also
and
began to
only the
realize what
occasional
was going
sound
on.
of rotten leaves
Gong
and
Sun Yu
branches
was a
under
little
their
embarrassed.
feet could be heard. He laughed
It was
awkwardly
eerie
and
and
said,
sinister.
"Peak Master,
All of a sudden,
I thought you were just
Su
too nervous."
Zimo frowned and
I didn't
shifted his
expect you
gaze
to be
to an
right.
ancient tree
Su
diagonally
Zimo
ahead.
smiled but didn't
That
say
ancient
anything.
tree grew in
Of
the
course,
darkness and
among
was
the
no
8
different
people,
from the other
Xin
trees
Yu,
around it.
Li Shui,
However,
and the others
Su
still
Zimo's
didn't think
spirit
much of it.
perception was
They
way
only
too
thought
strong.
that Su Zimo
He
had
could
said it
sense that there was a
casually
person
and that he
hidden
had
there
guessed
who was
correctly.
almost fused
After
with
the
the
ancient
ancient
tree,
battle. Everyone
Su
relaxed
Zimo did
and
not
chatted
make a
as they
move
rested.
immediately.
They were
That
in
was
high
because the
spirits
living
and
were
being
rather
hidden there was
excited.
not a fiend,
Su
but a
Zimo
human
sat
that looked
quietly in the same
exactly
place.
like them.
No one knew
However,
what he was
that person
thinking.
did not
In
have a
truth,
heaven bestowment
with his
badge on
abilities,
his waist.
he could have easily
Right
killed
then,
the
Lin
Rakshasa clan
Xuanzhen, who was
commander
at the
earlier.
front, stopped in her
In
tracks.
fact, it wouldn't have
She
been
did not make
difficult
a
for
move
him to kill the Rakshasa
Instead,
clan.
she turned to look in
However,
Su Zimo's
seeing the
direction
Rakshasa
before
clan
drawing
in the
her
land of
immortal
evil
sword
demons
and
reminded him
slashing
of
at the
something
ancient
else.
tree. That was
The
why
ancient
he was a
tree
little
snapped with a
distracted.
single sound.
When the female Rakshasa
Not only
clan
that,
commander
the
attacked
ancient
him,
tree was
he wanted to
sliced
kill
into
her
two
on the
and
spot.
spat out fresh
However,
blood as
the
it
moment
fell
they
to the ground
exchanged
heavily.
blows, he suddenly
When Wang
thought of an
Dong,
old friend
Gong
from
Sun Yu,
Tianhuang
and the others
region
saw
as he
Lin
looked at his
Xuanzhen stop
opponent
in
in
her
her
tracks
tracks.
and face.
They realized
Yu
that something
Luosha.
was amiss.
He and Yu
When Lin
Luosha
Xuanzhen
didn't have a
severed
deep
the ancient
relationship,
tree,
but there
they
was some
realized
karma
that there
between
was a
them.
person
Yu
hidden in the
Luosha
darkness.
had once submitted
That
to Wu
person was
Dao's
dressed in
original
black
body.
and was lying
After
in
she
a pool
regained
of
her
blood.
freedom,
She
his
had
body
never
was
betrayed
sliced
him.
into two by Lin
Moreover,
Xuanzhen's
after she led the
immortal
Rakshasa
sword.
clan,
The
she had
terrifying
never had
sword
any
chi had
conflicts with
already
humans.
surged into his body and even his spirit consciousness. His Tao fruit was covered in sword scars. The black-robed man was only a Kong Ming perfected immortal. Even a casual slash from Lin Xuanzhen was not enough for him to withstand. However, the black-robed man did not make a single sound from the beginning to the end. Even after being sliced in half by Lin Xuanzhen, he did not reveal any pain on his face. He merely glared coldly at Su Zimo and the others. Lin Xuanzhen carried her bloodless immortal sword and strode to the black-robed man's side. She looked down at him with an indifferent gaze. "All of you will die here." The black-robed man suddenly spoke. Before he finished speaking, a dazzling light burst out from between the black-robed man's eyebrows. It emitted a heart-palpitating energy fluctuation. Even Su Zimo felt a chill run down his spine. The black-robed man was so resolute. He wanted to detonate his Tao fruit and use the terrifying energy from the explosion to drag Lin Xuanzhen down with him. After all, at the peak of the Dongshu stage, the explosion of one's Tao fruit could pierce through the void and create a grotto heaven. Although it was only a Kongming Tao fruit, once it exploded, it would still produce a terrifying amount of energy. Buzz. The immortal sword in Lin Xuanzhen's hand trembled slightly. A flash of sword light entered between the black-robed man's eyebrows and instantly pierced through his primordial spirit. As the black-robed man died, the light between his eyebrows also dimmed. Lin Xuanzhen seemed to have anticipated this and did not give him a chance to detonate his Tao fruit. Chapter 2791. A Tao fruit was the condensed essence of a cultivator's cultivation. Unless they had no other choice, most cultivators would not choose such a resolute method. Everyone had a wishful thinking and would not be willing to give up their last shred of hope even if they were on the brink of despair. However, the black-robed man did not hesitate at all. Wielding sword immortal, Lin Xuanzhen tapped the black-robed man's glabella gently with the tip of his sword and dug out the man's Tao fruit. Unfortunately, the man's Tao fruit was already filled with cracks and was of no use. Lin Xuanzhen took off the man's storage bag and swept it with his spirit consciousness before tossing it on the ground casually. Wang Dong explained to Su Zimo and Kitsune softly, "Most of these fiend sinful spirits do not have any treasures and have empty bags. That's why our storage bags are extremely attractive to them." After killing the man, Lin Xuanzhen said indifferently, "Human cultivators in the fiend battlefield who do not have heaven's acknowledgement badges can be treated as sinful spirits. There's no need to be merciful to them." That statement seemed a little redundant. Everyone already knew about that before entering the surrounding temperature seemed to have dropped to freezing point and the atmosphere was stifling. Had to explain Everyone knew that they were going to be faced with a massacre who could tell that after an unknown period were meant for him. A series of divine powers and dharmic treasures even if we don't kill the darkness, the other party will kill us immediately. Group of 10. The moment we step into the fiend battlefield, activated we are irreconcilable with thousands of sword chi that shredded the darkness around them. To the death. Dozens of figures charged out of the dark moment before glaring at Su Zimo and the others with murderous intent. Sword formation they were no different from human cultivators. Why don't you count me in? They did not have heaven worship badges when they heard that Wang Dong, kill Gong Sun Yu, and the others exchanged glances. A huge battle broke out between both sides with troubled expressions. Lin Xuanzhen, under normal circumstances, and the others attacked sword formation formed by 9 people was indeed stronger than a sword formation formed by 8 people. The sword Peak Master Su's cultivation realm was with the support of the thousand sword formation. If he were to join the other party had dozens he would of perfected immortals and had the advantage in numbers. The power of the sword and the others would decrease instead of increase. And to put it simply, if Peak Master Su were to join the sword formation, he would drag the other parties down instead. Immortals were severely it wasn't injured. Good to tell Peak Master Su even killed by as it would hurt his reputation. The dozens of perfected immortals did not form a formation and fought individually. Master Su, in the end, of us are more familiar with the coordination of the thousand sword formation. Both parties had a rough idea of the other party's strength after a single clash, so we might not be used to it if you suddenly join and the others did not form the thousand sword formation. You can observe our cooperation in the sword formation and familiarize yourself with it. Seemed to have entered a strange state. Gong Sun Yu also hurriedly said, "We and her eyes were empty without any emotions." Although she mainly cultivated the Tao of the absolute in such a hurry. The 3 sword arts in the future, were still able to encounter some terrifying spirits in the consolidation stage and the celestial being stage. I'll let you show your skills. The baptism of blood nourished Lin Xuanzhen's massacring sword Tao continuously, and the others were implying. Zimo had so he didn't comprehended the immortal vanquishing sword, it did not and his understanding of the massacring sword Tao surpassed if Lin Xuanzhen and the others really encountered any danger that they could comprehend the immortal vanquishing sword very soon, for everyone was just short of an opportunity. Was merely a small lasted for only 100 breaths took it before the other party began to collapse. Before more than 10 commotion broke out in the darkness of the forest blood and died. This time the remaining sinful spirits could not withstand the attacks of the thousand sword formation and the others had one after another as well, wanting to return to the darkness of the forest and be on guard. If Lin Xuanzhen and the others wanted to continue chasing, it would be difficult to maintain following the thousand sword formation's long period of silence. With their methods, they would naturally not encounter any danger. However, Su Zimo and Kitsune who were in the center of the sword formation would have no one to protect them. However, this opportunity was extremely rare. If they could kill a few more sinful spirits, they might be able to obtain 100 battle merits in this battle alone. I'll go after them. You guys stay here and protect Peak Master Su and Junior Sister Baiming, Lin Xuanzhen said and took the lead in chasing after them. Just as they reached the edge of the dark forest, Lin Xuanzhen suddenly stopped and leaped into the air. He shouted, "Be careful of the Yaksha ghosts." The soil under Lin Xuanzhen suddenly cracked open, and a monster with dark green skin and a hump-like head with sparse green hair emerged with a steel fork in its hand. It went straight for Lin Xuanzhen. If Lin Xuanzhen had reacted a little slower and did not stop in time, he would have been pierced by this yaksha. This monster was extremely ugly and ferocious. It was the yaksha that Su Zimo had seen in the Divine Firmament Celestial Realms Shura battlefield. However, the yakshas in the Shura battlefield had been dead for many years. They had only borrowed the power of blood to reincarnate. However, the yaksha in front of them was surging with blood and vitality. It was a real living creature, and its combat power was many times stronger than those walking corpses. Chapter 2792. At the same time, 10 black shadows darted out from the dense forest and descended from the sky. They were densely packed like huge bats, pouncing toward Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others. "Everyone, be careful." Wang Tong's heart skipped a beat as he let out a soft bellow. These bat-like black shadows that pounced over from the sky were all heavenly yakshas. These heavenly yakshas held steel tridents with savage expressions. They grinned, and their 2 rows of sharp, intersecting fangs rubbed against each other, releasing a series of horrifying sounds. The yaksha that had just emerged from the ground belonged to the earthly yaksha. Both types of yakshas were ugly, and there were some obvious differences in their physiques. It was as if the heavenly yaksha had a thin layer of wings under its ribs, connecting its arms and legs. When fully extended, it was like a huge bat. Heavenly yakshas were best at fighting in midair, and their movement techniques were agile. Earthly yakshas, on the other hand, were like fish in water when they were deep underground. These yakshas grasped the timing of their attacks extremely accurately. When Lin Xuanzhen left, it was when the sword formation dissipated. That earthly yaksha's battle prowess was very strong, belonging to the Paradise Void Realm. To think that it could fight against Lin Xuanzhen, and it was hard to determine the victor within a short period of time. This group of yakshas had been hiding in the darkness for an unknown period of time. They had observed that Lin Xuanzhen's battle prowess was the strongest. Therefore, taking advantage of Lin Xuanzhen's absence, they launched a fierce attack, splitting Lin Xuanzhen, Wang Tong, and the others into 2 battlefields, taking them down one by one. At least 8 people were required to form the myriad sword formation. 10 heavenly yakshas descended from the sky, attacking ferociously and rapidly. Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others tried their best to shrink their defensive formation, protecting Su Zimo and Kitsune in the center. Although there were 10 heavenly yakshas, they were still unable to gain much of an advantage against Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others. Seeing that Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others had the upper hand, Su Zimo was not in a hurry to make a move. Suddenly, Su Zimo's expression changed, and a hint of killing intent flashed in his eyes. In his perception, an earth yaksha was sneaking out from the depths of the earth. It was staring at Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others, waiting for an opportunity to strike. This earth yaksha was at the Dongshu stage, and it didn't put Su Zimo in its eyes at all. Instead, it wanted to ambush Wang Tong and the others. This earth yaksha was extremely well hidden. It hid deep underground and held its breath. Even its heartbeat became almost negligible and the flow of its blood almost stopped. Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others were engaged in a battle with the 10 heavenly yakshas and had yet to notice the danger hidden deep underground. In fact, had it not been for Su Zimo's powerful spiritual sense, he might not have been able to detect the existence of this earth yaksha. Su Zimo sneered and touched his forehead with his finger. A green light flashed. It was the peerless divine weapon that was derived from Qinglian's growth to the 12th grade, Qingping sword. With the Qingping sword in hand, Su Zimo did not take any stance. With a flip of his hand, the Qingping sword instantly sank into the ground, and a 2-finger-wide sword hole appeared. How could this earth yaksha have expected that while it was motionless, a sharp sword would descend from the sky and sink into the top of its head? Its essence spirit was extinguished and it died on the spot. Even at the moment of its death, this earth yaksha did not know what had happened. Su Zimo kept the Qingping sword. The entire process was completed almost silently. Even Wang Tong and the others did not know what had happened, let alone the earth yaksha deep underground. After Su Zimo killed this earth yaksha, the entire battle situation suddenly changed. The 10 heavenly yakshas that were still engaged in a battle with Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others seemed to have sensed something. They suddenly panicked and even had thoughts of retreating. The earth yaksha that was engaged in a battle with Lin Xuanzhen also suddenly became flustered and revealed many openings. It was killed on the spot by Lin Xuanzhen's quasi-supreme divine power immortal vanquishing sword. Seems like the earth yaksha that I killed has quite a high status. Su Zimo thought to himself. That was precisely the reason why the earth yakshas were flustered. Seeing that the situation was not good, the 10 heavenly yakshas turned and fled. The auras of Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu, and the others surged. How could they possibly let the heavenly yakshas escape so easily? They gave chase and worked together with Lin Xuanzhen, who had turned back to attack. In just a few tens of breaths, they killed all 10 of the heavenly yakshas. Although they had expended quite a bit of energy in this battle, Wang Tong and the others were still excited. The 10 heavenly yakshas were all at the insightful void realm. That was 100 battle merits. Coupled with the sinful spirits that they had just killed, the battle merits that they obtained from this battle totaled up to close to 150 points. The trip to the fiend battlefield this time round was much smoother than they had imagined. Let's leave this place first. After a simple sweep of the battlefield, Lin Xuanzhen led the group and continued forward without resting. There was a high chance that the stench of blood here would attract even stronger fiend and sinful spirits. In fact, they might even encounter other living beings of the 3,000 worlds. The group had just gone through a huge battle and needed to rest. Everyone quickened their footsteps and finally rushed out of the forest before night fell. Let's find a safer place to rest first, Wang Tong said in a deep voice. The group searched along the foot of the mountain and finally found a hidden cave. However, they did not know what was in the cave that gave off a nauseating stench. Everyone frowned and revealed looks of disgust. They prepared to leave this place and look for another place to rest. Lin Xuanzhen's expression was indifferent as he suddenly said, "It's relatively safe here. This stench can cover our auras." Upon hearing that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have recalled something and was in a daze. Wang Tong, Gong Sun Yu and the others did not say anything when they saw Lin Xuanzhen's decision. They held their breaths and headed into the cave. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and looked at the walls of the cave. There seemed to be something smeared on them. That was the stench coming from the cave. Wang Tong shook his head gently.